Han Li's Wuxia Adventures. Chapter 568, The Counterattack of the Evil Swords. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with evil. There were 3 evil swords in his back. With the black clouds rolling in the air, the landscape suddenly looked apocalyptic. It was a shocking change. Lin Feng's pupils looked more and more evil. They were filled with murder, bloodthirstiness and violence. They looked piercingly cold. Nobody dared look into his eyes. Those swords were making him turn evil. Those 3 swords have an evil determination. They are malevolent swords. They can influence his soul. He's turning into a demon. Those people were looking at Lin Feng and shaking uncontrollably. It was really like that. Lin Feng couldn't fight anymore. He was exhausted, but at that moment he was releasing some terrifying evil chi and force. It didn't belong to his own body, it belonged to those swords. Those swords had already surpassed unconventional mysterious weapons, also known as Xian-level weapons. Maybe those swords were celestial weapons, also known as Tian-level weapons. Those evil swords had their own lives, their own determination. If people used them, they could influence and make them change intrinsically. They were much more powerful than Xian-level weapons. That evil weapon was terrifying. Even though Lin Feng could control it, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. He might end up being controlled by those swords and became their slave. Of course, that was why Lin Feng didn't dare use those evil swords, especially in the past when he wasn't strong enough. Last time he had tried to use them, he had had the feeling that he was going to lose his soul and control of himself. That sword had tried to absorb his own determination and had tried to invade his body. It almost gained control over him. The determination of those evil swords was terrifying. Lin Feng looked just like a death god at that moment, a murderer without limits. "You all want to kill me?" asked Lin Feng. That voice didn't even sound like his real voice anymore. It was an ice-cold evil voice. It sounded extremely strange and terrifying. Those people had the impression that their hearts were going to burst out. They wanted to kill Lin Feng. Could they still kill Lin Feng? "You will all die," said an evil voice as the evil swords rolled in the air. The dark clouds rolled even more brutally in the atmosphere. The evil swords were lacerating the atmosphere towards those people, leaving black marks behind them. They were falling down from the sky. In front of Lin Feng, the people who were in the front turned deathly pale and they suddenly looked hopeless. They released some energies to try and resist those evil swords. However, their energies just slowed down the evil swords a little bit. They then continued moving down towards them. In a flash, the light of the sword surrounded their bodies and they disappeared. Escape. He had to recall those swords back into his body, otherwise he would lose control and they would start controlling him. "Come back," shouted Lin Feng furiously. There was a gigantic pressure on his body. Those 3 swords were shaking violently. They were resisting Lin Feng. They weren't coming back. They were already trying to absorb Lin Feng's determination and trying to control his soul. The evil lights in Lin Feng's eyes grew brighter and brighter. He looked like a sanguinary demon. His eyes held on to the evil lights, but occasionally, for a second, they would go back to looking normal. Lin Feng was gnashing his teeth extremely hard as blood splashed out of his mouth. His soul came out. It was shaking violently. Those 3 swords enveloped were starting to control his soul, but Lin Feng's determination was extremely strong and resilient. Those swords kept shaking. Those dark lights surrounded Lin Feng's body. They were trying to swallow him. When Lin Feng was killing those people, the murderous determination of these swords had already started taking control over him. At the time it had helped him to kill them. But after having killed them all, they didn't want to move back into his body. They just wanted to make Lin Feng turn into a demon. They wanted to annihilate mankind. Lin Feng kept shaking while shouting violently, "Go!" In a flash, his determination flew towards those swords and buzzing sounds spread in the air. Lin Feng then moved into the water of the lake. The fresh water of the lake made Lin Feng regain his consciousness a little. He couldn't submit to those swords. Lin Feng was willing to use those extremely efficient swords as weapons, but he didn't want to become their subject. He couldn't let his determination get destroyed by them. As long as he resisted, as long as he had determination and a strong soul, he wouldn't submit himself, no matter what. At the bottom of the lake, bubbles and whirlpools appeared all around Lin Feng. Lin Feng violently shook his hands, and with his hands, forced the swords to move into his back. Blood dyed the water of the lake. The swords didn't want to move back into his body, so they started cutting him and injuring him. The determination of those swords is much stronger than before, thought Lin Feng. It seemed like as he broke through to higher cultivation levels, the swords also recovered their initial determination from the past, before they had been sealed in the mountain. They were using Lin Feng's cultivation and determination to recover their own. Those swords had only recovered a little bit of determination though, not everything. They were trying to wreck Lin Feng's determination to recover their own and use his body as a host. How could Lin Feng accept? Go back. The swords were moving back into his body from the back and blood kept spreading in the water. It was extremely painful, as if they had been cutting his bones. Those swords were unwilling to go back into his body, and he was unwilling to submit. Lin Feng would prefer dying with them than giving up. At that moment, Lin Feng's determination was indestructible. He didn't want to become a slave to those swords. Chapter 569, The Old Man and the Young Girl. In love with life, the young hero is determined, as a young man, determined to reach the clouds. Determined to fly above the mountains and rivers of the 9 clouds. Everybody's heart is filled with sorrow and grievance. The young man is gone, only alcohol can make you forget. Forget the past. A sad song was resonating in the atmosphere of a piece of wilderness in Celestial Dragon. There was an old man and a young girl. They were carrying baskets full of medicine on their back. The old man looked extremely sad. He was singing that sad song and his voice was trembling with emotion. The young girl was about 14 years old. She had a ponytail and looked pure, as if she knew nothing about the world. From her eyes, one could see that she was also sad. "Grandpa, here you go again," said the young girl. Her voice was melodious and clear. "Littleya, do you miss your big brother?" asked the old man, sounding sad. He was looking at the girl in a soft and tender way, but he also looked sad. "Grandpa, can you stop talking about it?" asked the young girl, sounding a bit angry. "Littleya, all right, I will stop talking about," said the old man while caressing the young girl's head. He sighed. He looked sad and nostalgic. His head was filled with memories. The wind was brushing their skin. The old man and the young girl remained silent. The young girl had a small basket on her back and the old man was carrying a big one. They kept walking forwards, remembering the past. They arrived on a grassland by a lake. "Look, Grandpa, so many corpses." The young girl noticed many corpses all around the lake. She was surprised. The old man frowned and shook his head. "There's somebody else there." The young girl noticed a silhouette in the lake. That person seemed dead. "Littleya, let's leave." The old man grabbed the young girl's hand and started walking away. He didn't want the young girl to see those corpses. But the young girl pulled him back. She didn't want to leave. She was staring at the silhouette in the lake. "Grandpa, wait," shouted the young girl. The old man still tried to pull her and said, "Let's leave." "Wait, Grandpa, he looks like my big brother," said the young girl. When the old man heard the girl, he looked at the silhouette in the lake. It was a young man with a handsome face. He looked outstanding. He really looked like his grandson. That young man was about the same age as his grandson, and his face looked like him too. He was wondering if that young man's smile was as radiant as his grandson's. The old man let go of the young girl's hand and the girl immediately started running on the water of the lake. In order to do that, it meant that she had, at least, broken through to the Ling Qi layer. Very quickly, she arrived next to the young man's body, grabbed his body and lifted him up. Then she brought him back to the lakeside. "Grandpa, he's still alive," said the young girl while delicately putting him down. The young man was covered with blood, he looked like he had spent lots of time in the water. He was deathly pale and had wrinkles everywhere, his skill was very swollen. The old man nodded and said, "Indeed, he has one last mouthful of air left." "Grandpa, you must save him," said the young girl, she looked impatient. The old man looked irresolute and hesitant. He nodded his head and said, "Since your brother died, I swore that I would never save anyone apart from you." "Grandpa, you just said that because you were furious. You are a doctor, it is your duty to save and cure people. You are a merciful and kind person, how could you let someone die?" "Don't you think he really looks like my brother?" said the girl sounding anxious and tenacious. "Littleya, he is not your brother," said the old man while shaking his head and smiling wryly. "I don't care, save him," said the young girl in a soft voice, she was stubborn. The old man was speechless. After his grandson's death, the only person left in his life was that young girl, he had raised her like his daughter. "All right, this is an exception though," said the old man when he saw how stubborn the young girl sounded. The young girl then smiled in a resplendent way, she nodded and said, "Thank you, Grandpa." The old man shook his head and crouched down, he then put his hand on the young man's wrist. In a flash, he started shaking from head to foot and abruptly stood up. He looked astonished. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" asked the young girl when she saw how surprised her grandfather looked. "Littleya, I can't save him," said the old man with sharp lights flashing in his eyes. "Why?" asked the young girl, she didn't understand. "I just can't." "Let's leave now, Littleya," demanded the old man while pulling the young girl. But the young girl didn't understand and kept staring at the young man lying on the ground. Cough cough. The young man coughed and some blood mixed with the water of the lake which spilt out of his mouth. The girl was surprised. "Grandpa, you must save him, he's still alive." "If you don't, he will die," said the girl, she was certainly not going to leave. "Littleya, I really can't." "Why can't you?" "Grandpa, you are an amazing doctor, you know all the remedies of the world, you can cure anyone. You said you wouldn't save anyone else since my brother died, but now it's just like my brother. He's about to die, and you can save him, why wouldn't you?" asked the young girl, she was angry and glaring at the old man. The old man was fixedly staring at her. He remained silent for a moment, sighed and saw that he wouldn't manage to make the young girl change her mind. He gave his basket to the young girl, crouched down and took another small basket which he was carrying. He opened the small basket and many twinkling and shiny golden syringes appeared. Those syringes could pierce through people's veins, bones, muscles, and even chi. Their content could spread everywhere in a person's body. The old man then opened the young man's clothes and a fire appeared. He burnt the syringes and slowly injected them into the young man's body, small subtle sounds were spreading in the atmosphere. The old man put the needles in a 9x9 formation, there were 81 syringes in total. The young man's body was covered with them. The girl was surprised, her grandpa was using so many needles, that was a lot. After the old man performed all those injections, another fire appeared and nourished the fire of the syringes so it wouldn't go out. The content of the syringes kept spreading in the young man's body. His body slightly turned red. Some small black stains appeared at the different places where the needles were on his skin, they were burning his skin. At the same time, water kept flowing out of his body, not out of his mouth but out his pores. The water was evaporating thanks to the fire. When the young girl saw that the young man's face was turning red, and wasn't as pale as before, she felt relief. 81 needles had been enough to save his life. The young man looked redder and redder as if he had been about to burn, his entire body was fire red. Cough, cough. The young man choked, it seemed like he was coughing out all the bad things in his body. The young girl's smile was getting more and more resplendent. "Up," said the old man, he shook his head and all the needles rose up in the air. The old man extinguished the fire and put everything back in his basket. "Grandpa, why are you not waking him up?" asked the young girl. After the 81 injections, the best thing to do now was to wake him. "Not now," said the old man. He picked up the young man's body and put him on his back. He then said, "Littleya, you take both baskets, let's go back. His injuries are not light." "All right," said the young girl while nodding. Even though she didn't understand what the old man meant, she obeyed him. She was certain that her grandpa was going to save that young man. Chapter 570, Waking up. After the young girl and the old man left the lakeside, two people appeared in the sky. They kept glancing around. "There," said one of them while looking at the corpses. They were both speechless as they immediately moved down and landed on the ground. All they could see was a sea of corpses. It seemed that they had all been lacerated by a sword. They had all died. Those two people pulled a long face. How was that possible? So many strong cultivators had been killed, even a cultivator of the 7th Xian-Qi layer. How come they hadn't killed Lin Feng? In front of them, many people were dead, but Lin Feng's corpse wasn't there. "Nia Yun, what do you think?" asked one of them while pulling a long face to the young man next to him. "Maybe some people helped him," said Nia Yun in a cold and detached way. The middle-aged man nodded. There was only one solution. Lin Feng wouldn't have been able to kill so many strong cultivators without any help. Lin Feng had only broken through to the 4th Xian-Qi layer. Even though he was very strong and could defeat one cultivator of the 6th Xian-Qi layer, how could he resist dozens of cultivators of the 6th Xian-Qi layer and one cultivator of the 7th Xian-Qi layer? How come they hadn't managed to kill Lin Feng? Who could have helped him though? Asked the middle-aged man. Nia Yun shook his head. The only solution was that people from Dragon Mountain had helped him, or maybe the strongest cultivators of Xueyu. Besides, people from Dragon Mountain would have never handled the situation in such a way. They wouldn't have annihilated all these people from Tianfeng and left them here. The problem now is that Lin Feng hasn't died. After all of them died, Lin Feng has disappeared. Someone helped him or saved him, said Nia Yun slowly. The middle-aged man looked irresolute. That was a disaster for them. Lin Feng had just broken through to the 4th Xian-Qi layer. It was terrifying to think that he had killed all those people by himself. It would mean he would be even more terrifying in the future. If Lin Feng became stronger, killing cultivators of the 7th or even of the 8th Xian-Qi layer wouldn't be a problem anymore. That would be a catastrophe for Tianfeng. They clearly understood that Lin Feng didn't hesitate to annihilate his enemies. He had exterminated a few big sects in Xueyu already. Let's go back. Maybe we will find him. We must kill him. Dragon Mountain is not the easiest place to kill him, but letting Lin Feng live is too dangerous, expressed the middle-aged man coldly. If they came across Lin Feng, they would definitely kill him. But Nia Yun looked hesitant. He didn't know what to think. He was the first envoy of Tianfeng. What he wanted was to kill Lin Feng at the great competition of Xueyu. However, the venerable imperial tutor of Tianfeng wanted to kill Lin Feng as soon as possible in order to avoid future troubles. All in all, it was useless for them to stay there, so they rose up in the air and left. The lake and its surroundings were invaded by an eerie silence once again. The people from Xueyu were still in their residence, having a rest. Some people looked anxious, especially the two brothers of the Yu clan. They were pacing about in a courtyard. They didn't feel like practicing cultivation. They were wondering if Lin Feng was dead or not. If Lin Feng hadn't died, he might already know that they had sent those people to kill him. In short, Yu Qin and Yu Jian weren't feeling safe in Celestial Dragon. They were realizing that some cultivators in the continent of the 9 clouds were much stronger than what they had imagined. They were realizing that most people they came across outside there were of the Xian-Qi layer, and seeing people much stronger than them wasn't rare. They were geniuses from Xueyu. They were considered as extremely strong cultivators in Xueyu. But in Dragon Mountain, they were realizing that they weren't exceptional at all. They were feeling a bit dispirited because of all those things. Besides, Lin Feng was becoming stronger, faster than them. They felt like they were carrying a mountain of pressure on their shoulders and it was making them suffocate. Therefore, they wanted Lin Feng to die as soon as possible. However, Lin Feng knew nothing of all those things. At that moment, he was lying in a small wooden bed in a hut and his eyes were tightly closed, he hadn't woken up. Outside of the hut, the old man was sorting some medicinal herbs. The young girl was in front of a fire, she was ventilating the fire to keep it strong. On the fire, there was a cauldron out of which pleasant fragrances kept emerging. The young girl's face was turning red because of the heat and her hair was messy. Littleya, the fire needs to be pure and hot. Doctors and alchemists are different. Alchemists need recipes, doctors need patience, said the old man slowly. The young girl nodded and said, Grandpa, you already told me that 1,000,000 times. If I don't tell you these things many times, you will never remember, said the old man smiling. Grandpa, why don't you help him wake up? Asked the girl sounding surprised. I can't, there are a few things in his body which need to be kept under control, otherwise, it will influence him and hurt him, explained the old man as if the girl couldn't understand. She only nodded, she trusted her grandfather. The fire is good now, we can stop it. Go and give him the potion, said the old man while smelling the fragrance of the alcohol. He wanted to make sure that the potion was ready. All right, said the young girl while turning off the fire. She took a spoon and put the potion in a bowl, she then covered it with a towel and brought it inside. The old man looked at the young girl walk away while shaking his head and smiling wryly. He continued making other potions as if nothing else mattered in the world. In the hut, the girl was blowing on the potion to make it cool down. Lin Feng's eyes were still closed. She put 1/3 of the potion into his mouth allowing it to spread in his body, it was useless to give him more. Even though the girl knew it was a waste, she really wanted to save him. She continued to give him everything. Very quickly, the bowl was empty. The girl even gave Lin Feng another bowl, she kept giving him the potion, she only had one last bowl left in her hand. My brother was as young as you when he died, I wonder if you will be as handsome as him when you wake up, whispered the young girl. She blew on the bowl once again and poured the content into Lin Feng's mouth. However, at that moment, Lin Feng spat out some of the potion. The young girl wiped off some of the liquid around Lin Feng's mouth, but at that moment, a sharp sound spread in the air which scared her. She raised her head and saw Lin Feng's eyes, he had just opened them. "Oh!" The girl cried out in surprise. Immediately after, she heard a sound, the bowl fell down and broke. Lin Feng's eyes looked terrifyingly ice-cold, sanguinary, and aggressive. The girl started shaking violently. She had the impression that it was an illusion, those eyes didn't match his face. He didn't look as handsome as her brother because of them, he looked evil. She was scared. At that moment, Lin Feng suddenly sensed an acute pain in his body which made him groan in a gloomy way. He had the feeling that an evil force was controlling his body. "Oh!" Lin Feng shouted in a low voice, in a flash, the old man appeared. When the old man saw Lin Feng's evil expression in his eyes, his hand flew and he attacked Lin Feng's body. He started slapping him over and over again. At the same time, his eyes twinkled and a needle appeared as he stuck it into Lin Feng's shoulder, it was filled with sun energy. He injected these needles into both of Lin Feng's shoulders. Afterward, Lin Feng calmed down. In a flash, his muscles stopped twitching. He closed his eyes and then immediately opened them again. Lin Feng looked like he was suffering a lot as he was frowning intensely. He was still alive. He hadn't died. He could barely remember what happened with the evil swords. Chapter 571, Recovering the Evil Swords had a strong determination, so it had been a battle between Lin Feng's determination and the determination of the swords. They wanted to control him and invade his body. Lin Feng didn't want to become possessed by those evil swords, He had tried to make them go back into his body through his back, but blood had flowed. He had decided that if they didn't go back into his body, he would prefer dying with them. In the end, his determination had won over the determination of the swords, and he had managed to recall them back into his body. He then used his soul to surround them inside him, thus imprisoning them. However, he had lost all his pure chi and his determination was profoundly affected. His soul had also lost some of its strength. His entire body was empty, all his energies and different sorts of strength had been drained out. He was badly injured and had almost died. But at that moment, he was lying in a bed, still alive. After a moment, Lin Feng opened his eyes again, they were twinkling. The old man and the young girl were standing in front of him. They were calmly observing him, especially the old man, he was staring at him vigilantly. "Why did you constrict my strength?" asked Lin Feng coldly. He could sense that his physical strength had undergone something unusual, it seemed like something or someone had sealed his strength and pure chi. "I didn't do it, are you not the one who did it?" asked the old man indifferently. Lin Feng was confused. He didn't look cold anymore, he looked calm again. "It's my fault, I'm sorry, thank you for saving me," said Lin Feng. He was regaining consciousness, slowly starting to remember what had happened. It almost felt like his cultivation had been sealed. Lin Feng felt ashamed and guilty, they had saved his life and he was blaming them. But Lin Feng's tone of speech was still very cold and gloomy. "Are you different from before? Do you have a dark feeling?" asked the old man. Lin Feng was shocked, he looked at the old man for a long time and then nodded. He could indeed feel that he was different, he had changed. His personality had become ice cold. He couldn't help it. "Next time you shouldn't use a strength which is not yours. You were lucky this time, but maybe that next time you will not be as lucky," said the old man while shaking his head. Indeed, Lin Feng had used 3 swords and their determination was monstrously powerful, he hadn't been able to control them entirely. If he had used 9 swords, he would have become a monster. He needed a monstrously powerful strength to control those swords, otherwise he couldn't use them. He would end up possessed by that demonic force. Lin Feng moved and tried to sit down but he couldn't, his entire body felt extremely painful. He slightly raised his body and fell back down. "Do you think that your injuries are that light? Now, you need to rest, don't think too much. It takes time for the medicine to cure you, the medicine is preventing you from using your strength right now but the effects will dissipate slowly as you recover. You will recover but you need to rest to do so," explained the old man glancing at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was surprised, the medicine was preventing him from using his strength, nobody had done that to him before. The old man had used extremely strong medicine on Lin Feng, if he had used that on any other regular person, their cultivation could have been crippled. The old man then turned around and left the hut slowly. Lin Feng looked at the old man's silhouette and used his celestial eyes to look at him. He was dumbfounded. The old man didn't seem strong at all. He was an ordinary old man. "Don't be surprised. I am an ordinary doctor, but I am different from other doctors, I am a real doctor," said the old man slowly. He didn't misunderstand Lin Feng, he knew that Lin Feng was only curious. "A real doctor," whispered Lin Feng when he heard the old man, other doctors weren't real doctors. But the old man had really used extremely powerful medicine on Lin Feng. Surprisingly, he had saved him. Besides, he had managed to constrict the strength of the evil swords as well as Lin Feng's own physical strength. Thanks to the old man, the evil swords weren't controlling Lin Feng. "Doctors, it seems like I underestimated them. There are some real ones," thought Lin Feng. He then looked at the young girl, she was 14. She looked clean and smart, she was also looking at him in a strange way. She didn't understand what her father and Lin Feng had been talking about. Was there something in Lin Feng's body? "Are you feeling better?" asked the girl. Lin Feng nodded and said, "Apart from the fact that I can't move, I feel normal." "Oh. said the young girl while smiling, and then tried to cheer him up. Don't worry, as long as my grandpa is here, you will be all right. You just need to rest. Lin Feng remained silent and nodded. You can rest, I will ask my grandpa to give you more medicine, said the young girl while running away and leaving Lin Feng alone in the hut. He was just blankly staring at her. One day later, in the small hut, Lin Feng was sitting on the bed and drinking the same potion. His face had regained some color already and his body felt a lot less painful. I have almost recovered. Lin Feng shook his head while looking at the bowl. The potion was too bitter. Lin Feng had never drunk such a bitter potion, it made him feel nauseous. No, you must drink it all, insisted the young girl firmly and continued pouring the potion into Lin Feng's mouth. Lin Feng had no choice, he finished everything. Finally, Lin Feng took a deep breath as he finished the potion. He then moved and said to the girl, I want to stand up and walk. Lin Feng knew the young girl's name already, obviously, he had been there for one day already. Her name was Xiaoya. She was an extremely pure and innocent young girl, her heart was free from evil. She looked at him hesitantly but nodded and said, Okay, I will help and support you. She grabbed Lin Feng's arm and tried to help him stand. Lin Feng smiled wryly, since he had landed in the world of cultivation, he had never thought that such a thing would ever happen to him. He stood up, made a few steps and said, It's all right, I can walk by myself. Oh. The young girl stopped holding him and looked at Lin Feng walk forwards. Lin Feng still looked cold, he was walking slowly, there was no problem. He just had the sensation that his muscles were a bit paralyzed. Lin Feng walked a few steps and left the hut. Tap tap tap. Lin Feng was walking step by step and discovered the wonderful scenery in front of him. He continued to walk for a while and then stopped and took in a deep breath. How beautiful! There was an emerald green mountain chain outside of the hut, it was a wonderful landscape. In such an environment, Lin Feng felt like he was filled with vitality and vigor again. He wanted to walk and explore the area, it was so beautiful. It made him want to run around and see nature. He was at the top of a mountain in the middle of that mountain chain. Walk a lot, observe a lot, regain some vitality, try to understand various things, and then the coldness will leave your heart, explained the old man who was behind Lin Feng. He was talking in a slow and reassuring way. Lin Feng had to talk a lot, observe a lot, regain his vitality, understand things. When he was still weak, Yan Yuping Sheng had told him to meditate and understand things to improve his cultivation a lot. Afterwards, he had become a better cultivator. Then Yan Yuping Sheng told him how to use deadly energy with his zither. It was then that Lin Feng had become a real murderer. However, his deadly energy had changed since he had used the evil swords. His soul and deadly energy had become much colder. The old man was actually telling him to meditate. Everything was a cycle, it was a new start. Xiaoya was calmly standing on Lin Feng's side and was observing the emerald mountain chain as well, she looked so innocent. You know, I had one brother, he was as young as you. He had extremely high natural abilities, and a high cultivation level. He used to say he liked my face and my name. He was such a good brother to me and his smile was heartwarming, said the young girl in a low voice. She was smiling in a resplendent way while remembering her brother. Lin Feng understood how much that young girl used to love her brother. But suddenly, one day, he left us and died. He will never come back. I am alone with my grandpa now. She was still smiling but her heart was filled with sadness which made Lin Feng shiver. He had died. Chapter 572, Little Sister. The wind was brushing Lin Feng's skin and he could feel the young girl's sorrow. Her brother, an extremely talented and strong cultivator, had died when he was as young as Lin Feng. He used to compliment her all the time and smile in a radiant way. That was such a beautiful and happy time, but then he had suddenly died. How sad. However, the young girl was still smiling in a pure and unadulterated way. After my brother died, my grandpa and I have been traveling around. We like to stay in some wild and remote places. We have some breaks, observe nature and rest. Now we're in this mountain chain of Celestial Dragon. We've been here for a while, said the young girl. The old man was bringing her to various places to watch beautiful nature. They were looking for the meaning of life, for places where they could feel alive. My brother died when he was your age and you're still alive. You're also extremely talented and strong. Why are you still not happy? Why are you so cold? Just relax, said the young girl when she saw how cold Lin Feng looked. She was smiling in a radiant way. She looked like a little sunshine. Lin Feng suddenly felt guilty. He was still alive. He was going to recover promptly. He had parents who loved him and he even had 2 girlfriends who were waiting for him. Why was he so cold? Phew. Lin Feng took a deep breath and continued to walk slowly towards a piece of emerald green field. The young girl was following him too. She wanted to stay with him. Little ya, shouted the old man, which made her stop. She turned her head and saw the old man nodding at her. Leave him alone. The young girl looked at Lin Feng and then nodded. She stopped following him. Lin Feng was walking alone on the hillside towards some more emerald green places. He was walking slowly, moving up the hill. He then arrived at the top of a mountain. In front of him, there was a precipice. It was emerald green too. Lin Feng observed the landscape and sat down slowly. He then lied down again and looked at the azure blue sky. He was lying between an azure blue sky and an emerald green grass. Lin Feng closed his eyes and started breathing deeply, trying to feel alive. Lin Feng stayed there for an entire day. The young girl and the old man didn't bother him at all, as if they had forgotten about him. Lin Feng was still lying on the ground. He was starting to forget the hardships he had gone through. Lin Feng was just breathing calmly, as if he had never breathed before. Since he had come to this world, Lin Feng had the feeling that he had always been under pressure, doing millions of things. He had never really taken the time to breathe, at least not like this. Time to eat, shouted a voice at that moment. Lin Feng then heard some steps. He turned around and crawled on the ground. He saw a silhouette in the distance. It was the young girl. She was carrying a bowl of food. She immediately crouched down in front of him. You haven't eaten anything for a whole day, are you not hungry? Look, I have some delicious food for you, said the young girl, while taking the lid covering the bowl away. The food smelt great as it immediately began invading Lin Feng's nostrils. It's grilled wild rhinoceros meat. It will give you strength, said the girl, while putting the bowl in front of Lin Feng and smiling in a resplendent way. Lin Feng sat down. He looked impatient to eat. Here, take it, said the young girl, while putting it in Lin Feng's hands. He raised his head and a magnificent smile appeared on his face. The young girl was astonished. At that moment, Lin Feng didn't look cold anymore. He didn't look expressionless, aggressive and violent either. He was just smiling in a resplendent way. He looked alive. In his eyes, there was nothing but the food though. Bro, whispered the young girl, in a voice which sounded illusional. Lin Feng was speechless. But he smiled and put his hand on the girl's head, caressing her hair firmly and making it a bit messy. Stop that, said Xiaoya sounding angry, but that anger was the kind of anger a young girl would feel when being teased by an older brother. If I had such a little sister, I would be so happy, thought Lin Feng. He then grabbed the bowl, separated the food into 2, 1 part for him and 1 part for Xiaoya. We're like one. Yes, just like one person. Xiaoya grabbed some grilled rhinoceros meat and wolfed down her food. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. She didn't look like an elegant young lady at that moment. Lin Feng kept eating. After finishing their meal, they both lied down on the grass and looked at the sky. They seemed full and extremely happy. I'm so full, said Xiaoya, while looking at Lin Feng. There was oil all over her mouth. She looked extremely cute. Lin Feng looked at her and smiled in a warm and tender way. The girl was realizing that Lin Feng's smile looked like that of her brother, like a sunshine. "Can I always call you brother?" asked the young girl. Lin Feng was a bit surprised, remained silent for a moment and then smiled and said, "I always wanted a little sister." "Promise," said the young girl, while stretching her little finger to Lin Feng. Lin Feng did the same, caught her little finger with his own and then said, "I promise." He, I have a new brother," said Xiaoya. She looked at the sky and asked, "Bro, you still need to tell me your name." "Lin Feng." "Lin Feng," whispered the young girl, while smiling. "Grandpa will be so happy when he knows that I have a new brother. Will he not think that I'm a liar?" Lin Feng smiled. "He won't. You don't understand him. He looks cold but he has a soft heart, he is generous and warm. Otherwise, he wouldn't be such a capable doctor," said Xiaoya, while smiling. Lin Feng slightly nodded. A doctor's purpose was to save people, heal them. If they were not kind-hearted, they couldn't become good doctors, they would never become skilled enough. If their true purpose was to save lives, they could become great doctors. That was true even for alchemists, they would then be even more respected by people. Of course, Lin Feng knew that the old man was kind, otherwise he wouldn't have saved his life. "Let's go and see Grandpa," said the young girl, while pulling on Lin Feng's hand. They then both ran towards the hut. Lin Feng had recovered a lot, he could run again. The old man was still picking up some herbs and was a bit surprised when he saw Lin Feng and the young girl run towards him, especially due to the change in Lin Feng's expression. He had a resplendent smile on his face. The old man looked at Lin Feng from head to toe and could see that Lin Feng's smile was authentic and sincere, he wasn't hiding anything. The old man was very surprised. What a strong vitality and power of understanding, thought the old man. He then nodded at Lin Feng. He hadn't thought that Lin Feng would recover from the evil energies that quickly. He had become his own self again and even looked like he had understood himself more than before. How rare. Lin Feng and the young girl arrived next to the old man. Lin Feng bowed in front of him in a grateful manner. "Grandpa, I have a new big brother," announced the young girl, which astonished the old man. He then looked at Lin Feng. The old man lowered his head and continued picking up herbs. He didn't say anything but nodded indifferently. "What's wrong, Grandpa? Are you not happy?" asked Xiaoya. The old man slowly raised his head, he looked extremely sad. He then smiled at Lin Feng and said, "At first, I didn't intend to save you, you perfectly understand the situation you were in when we found you. However, little Ye convinced me to save you because you resembled her dead brother, therefore I agreed to save you, but I still had my worries about what would you be like after waking up. It seems like I thought too much. I hope that you will always be the way you are now. I also hope that you will never use an external strength again, unless you are strong enough to control it." "I understand," said Lin Feng while nodding and bowing once again. "All right. Now leave me alone, don't disturb me," said the old man, while waving. He then lowered his head and continued picking up herbs. Chapter 573, The Separation. Early in the morning, a gentle but cold breeze was blowing. In front of the small hut, Lin Feng was sitting on a rocking chair which emitted squeaking sounds. He was enjoying the peace and tranquility of the early morning with his eyes closed. In love with life, the young hero is determined, as a young man, determined to reach the clouds. Determined to fly above the mountains and rivers of the 9 clouds. Everybody's heart is filled with sorrow and grievance. The young man is gone, only alcohol can make you forget. Forget the past. In the distance, a voice was resonating in the air. Lin Feng opened his eyes and gazed into the distance. It was misty in the mountains, but Lin Feng could see the old man with his basket on his back. He was slowly walking towards the hut. Every day, at night, the old man would go away and pick up herbs until early in the morning. He was going then because the fragrance of the herbs was much more intense at night. Everybody's heart is filled with sorrow and grievance. The young man is gone, only alcohol can make you forget. Forget the past, whispered Lin Feng. He looked at the old man and smiled at him. You woke up, said the old man, while nodding at Lin Feng. Good morning, Grandpa, said Xiaoya, while coming out of the hut on Lin Feng's left side. Bro, good morning, said Xiaoya. When she saw Lin Feng on the rocking chair, she had a sweet smile on her face. After Lin Feng saw her smile, he felt delighted and smiled back in the same resplendent way. Xiaoya went to wash her face and then came back to Lin Feng. Then she said, Bro, let's go for a walk together. Alright, agreed Lin Feng, nodding. Xiaoya went behind him and started pushing the chair. It had wheels under it. Actually, it was the chair her grandfather used to knit in. Because Lin Feng had taken very powerful medicine, his body was half paralyzed at that moment. Xiaoya was pushing the chair towards the mountains. Lin Feng closed his eyes and enjoyed the freshness and fragrance of the atmosphere. He felt like he was intoxicated with happiness. The old man put his basket down and looked at them from a distance. He smiled and shook his head. Xiaoya wasn't feeling lonely anymore. The old man had a strange facial expression at that moment. He looked pensive. Bro, how do you feel right now? Asked Xiaoya, while pushing the chair. I feel much better, answered Lin Feng. He was still taking the old man's medicine and could feel that he was recovering quickly. He almost felt better than before the event with the evil swords. Lin Feng had the feeling that he could sense his hair and pores much better than before, especially when the wind was brushing away on his skin. It felt very pleasant. Lin Feng was impatient to recover. It would have been great to be entirely healthy again. He, Grandpa is a great doctor who will cure all your injuries. You just need to rest and you will be perfectly healthy soon enough, said Xiaoya, smiling. Alchemists used pills which had immediate results, but doctors' remedies were different. They required time, especially the remedies the old man had given to him. Their effects required a long time. Lin Feng couldn't stand up each time he took those remedies. Actually, the doctor could have allowed Lin Feng stand up, but he had chosen to let him recover slowly. Xiaoya, what is your grandfather's name? Asked Lin Feng suddenly. The old man had saved Lin Feng's life, but Lin Feng still didn't know his name. Wu Tian, Xiao Wu Tian, replied Xiaoya in a soft and tender way. She had a lot of respect for her grandfather. He was the person she respected the most. Xiao Wu Tian, whispered Lin Feng, what an incredible name. They both looked at the emerald immensity before their eyes and at the sea of clouds. In the distance, the red morning sun was slowly rising. It was particularly beautiful above the emerald boundlessness. How beautiful! I wish we could do this together every morning, said Xiaoya in a low voice. Lin Feng felt extremely calm and serene at that moment, just as if he had been meditating. Meditation. Observing nature was a sort of meditation. Both of them remained silent and calmly enjoyed the landscape. A long time passed, even the sun began setting. Still, Lin Feng and Xiaoya hadn't left. Lin Feng was on the rocking chair as he watched the sunset. Xiaoya was sitting next to him, sometimes calmly lying down. Only after it became dark outside did Xiaoya push Lin Feng back to the hut. On the second day, they were at the top of the mountain looking at the morning sun once again. They were calmly observing the nature around them. And the third day they did the same. On the fourth day, they did the same as well. Xiaoya's fingers were in Lin Feng's hair. She was playing with his hair, laughing and giggling. It was at this moment that Lin Feng moved. Phew! Lin Feng breathed deeply and stood up. He made a light step, and then one more. Lin Feng felt great with his recovering body. Xiaoya, I can stand up again, said Lin Feng, while smiling and clenching his fist. The strength of the Harukas and his pure qi were flowing in his body again. He felt very well. Even though his pure qi and physical strength hadn't reached their maximum again, Lin Feng knew that it was only a matter of time. Lin Feng's pure qi hadn't disappeared, it was just the effect of the medicine which was preventing it from returning back to normal. His strength of the Harukas was as powerful as before though. Hee hee. Xiaoya giggled when she saw Lin Feng stand up. She smiled in a sweet way. If Lin Feng could stand up again, it was proof that he was very strong. He wasn't in such a bad state anymore. He had almost entirely recovered. The only problem was the effect of the medicine on his body, but it was going to wear off soon. Bro, let's go and tell Grandpa the good news, said Xiaoya, pulling Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng had the feeling that he was flying, the wind was blowing on his face. Even though it had only been a few days since he had last flown, he had the impression that it was a new feeling. Grandpa, shouted Xiaoya, she was very excited but nobody replied. Grandpa, Lin Feng can stand up again. Xiaoya opened the old man's hut and saw nobody, she stopped. Did Grandpa go to pick up herbs? Whispered Xiaoya. She was surprised. She smiled at Lin Feng and looked in the other hut, but nobody was there either. The old man was nowhere to be found. At that moment Lin Feng moved closer to the old man's hut and shouted, Xiaoya. Bro, what's up? Xiaoya ran towards Lin Feng and looked in the same direction as him, she was astonished. There were a few words carved into the wood of the table. Lin Feng, please take care of Xiaoya. Grandpa, Xiaoya was shaking her head, she walked backwards and shouted at the hut, Grandpa. Lin Feng ran towards Xiaoya, as she burst into tears. Tears kept flowing on her cheeks while she continued calling for her grandfather. How was that possible? Her grandfather couldn't abandon her. Xiaoya was trying to calm down but she knew the truth, her grandfather had really abandoned her. Her grandfather had left, she couldn't find him anywhere. She ran around while crying for a long time, until she was exhausted. She sat down on the ground and continued weeping, it felt painful, her grandfather had left. Lin Feng calmly approached Xiaoya and sat down beside her. He gave her a big hug and caressed her hair. She hadn't expected that her grandfather would leave that way, he had said nothing. But Lin Feng understood that if the old man had done things that way, it was because he had his own reasons. He didn't want to hurt Xiaoya, that's why he had left that way. It was also clear to Lin Feng that the old man was extremely depressed. Many things had happened to the old man in his life. Chapter 574, Visualizations. Lin Feng was still hugging Xiaoya, he had tears on his sleeves. He didn't know what to say to cheer her up, so he continued gently caressing her hair. Bro, do you think Grandpa will ever come back? Asked Xiaoya, while moving a little bit. She moved away from Lin Feng's arms, her face was still covered with tears. Lin Feng raised his head, smiled and said, he will definitely come back. Your grandpa loves you and will certainly miss you. He left so suddenly because he probably had some important things to do. Wait until he is done and then he will come back. Really? Asked Xiaoya surprised. Lin Feng was probably just trying to cheer her up. Of course, said Lin Feng, smiling and nodding. Xiaoya, let's go back and see what your grandfather left behind, he left us this message, maybe we will find another message. Grandpa left something? Yes, on the table, answered Lin Feng, nodding. Okay, let's go and see, said Xiaoya. She immediately stood up and grabbed Lin Feng's hand, she was impatient to see what her grandfather had left. In the hut, as expected, there were things on the table. There were actually 3 things left behind. There was a thing made of fur, Lin Feng was surprised, it looked like a skin mask. The old man had surprisingly left a skin mask. It was probably for Lin Feng. Then, he was even more surprised, there were actually all sorts of different skin masks. Why did the old man leave that behind, thought Lin Feng, frowning. He didn't understand. What were those skin masks for? He then looked to the right, there was a memory jade. Xiaoya, what is inside? Maybe it's for you, said Lin Feng, softly while smiling. Xiaoya nodded and looked inside the memory jade. A moment later she turned to Lin Feng. Bro, it's for you, said Xiaoya, while handing over the jade to him. Bro, have a look and you will understand, said Xiaoya, when she saw that Lin Feng was surprised. Lin Feng nodded and looked inside. Immediately after, everything became clear to Lin Feng. He understood why the old man had left the fur masks. In that memory jade, there was an illusion technique that enabled a cultivator to hide his chi and even change it. Every cultivator could hide their own face but they couldn't hide their own chi. If someone else had sharp senses, they could easily recognize someone who had altered their face. However, that technique enabled a cultivator to hide their own chi to make it unrecognizable. Thus, used with those skin masks, that illusion technique was perfect. It enabled a cultivator to completely change his appearance and chi. The old man had left the illusion technique and the skin masks for Lin Feng because he knew that Lin Feng had many enemies. The old man didn't want Lin Feng to be harassed by them. He could become another person when using those things and his enemies would never be able to recognize him. The old man had really thought of everything. Lin Feng then looked on the right and saw a small bowl. There wasn't a potion inside, but many pills. What's that? Lin Feng was unsure. The old man had left pills. What kind of pills were they? Bro, those are pure healing pills. People under the Tian Qi layer can recover their entire pure Qi when taking those pills, even if they don't have any pure Qi left. To Lin Feng's delight, Xiaoya knew what things her grandfather had. Pure healing pills, he was astonished. When a cultivator had no pure Qi left, he could recover it in its entirety when taking those pills. How incredible! If he had had those pills before, he wouldn't have needed to use the evil swords after having used all of his pure Qi for the Black Lotus. He was lucky that the old man had saved him. The old man had prepared all those things for Lin Feng. Grandpa left nothing for me, whispered Xiaoya. She looked incredibly disappointed. Those 3 things were all for Lin Feng. Silly girl, said Lin Feng, while caressing her hand. He said in a gentle voice, your grandfather told me to take care of you and gave me these things, don't you think that he did that for you too? Xiaoya raised her head and looked at him nodding. She obviously understood what he meant, but the old man had abandoned her and hadn't left anything concrete for her. She still felt sad and disappointed. Another member of her family had left her. Her grandfather had left her and might never come back. Don't worry, I will take care of you until your grandfather comes back, said Lin Feng, while caressing the girl's hair before walking forward. Sniff sniff. Xiaoya burst into tears once again. She had always been with her grandfather, it was the first time he wasn't by her side. At the top of the mountain, Xiaoya was sitting on the ground, holding her chin with her hands. She was blankly staring at Lin Feng. It had already been 3 days since the old man had left, she was getting used to it. Lin Feng was always with her even while practicing cultivation. Xiaoya would always stay next to Lin Feng and watch while he was practicing. She never bothered him. Lin Feng's pure qi was recovering slowly. He still needed a few days before entirely recovering. At that moment, he was sitting cross-legged and his eyes were firmly closed. He was doing some visualizations. Some strange threads of qi appeared around him, it seemed like the Haruka statue was trying to come out of his body. Suddenly an illusion of the Haruka appeared. When Xiaoya saw that, she was astonished, she was blankly staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was doing image visualization. He was visualizing a Haruka statue. It looked like a Buddha and a demon at the same time. His pure qi is still restrained. What is he practicing? It seems so powerful, thought Xiaoya, when she saw Lin Feng's visualization. Her pure-looking eyes were twinkling, it was the first time she saw someone practicing such a skill. That kind of visualization skill was extremely rare. Lin Feng was visualizing the Haruka while black strength kept flowing in his body. It looked indestructible. The strength of the Harukas kept rotating, there were both big and small cycles. Lin Feng was concentrating on the statue in his brain, his entire consciousness was dedicated to the statue. The strength of the Haruka in his body was becoming much stronger. His pure chi was too weak at that moment, so it was a great opportunity to practice body cultivation. Lin Feng was realizing that since he had been injured, he was more open-minded, and he felt more natural. His state of mind had thoroughly changed. Besides, the rotation speed of the strength of the Harukas had also increased. Before, when he was visualizing the Haruka, the statue wouldn't come out. But now, he was practicing skills normally and that special visualization skill came out as well. Lin Feng didn't mind having Xiaoya observe him by his side, he had nothing to hide from her, he had no secrets. Lin Feng continued visualizing, he was in a trance. He wasn't waking up. The strength of the Haruka in his body was becoming stronger and stronger. Chapter 575, The Last Fight, The Strength of the Haruka. I have to let it flow freely. After 2 days Lin Feng opened his eyes, he looked enlightened. Now, his perceptions were more acute. He felt more familiar with the strength of the Harukas, the statue could even emerge out of his body when he was visualizing it. Besides, while visualizing, Lin Feng was realizing that the strength of the Harukas had a part which belonged to the demons and a part which belonged to the Buddhas. But it was surely more holy than evil. Lin Feng moved and his fist struck the atmosphere, a terrifying physical strength emerged, it was evil and devastating. His strength of the Harukas didn't look incredible but it was extremely powerful. This time I immediately managed to make it rotate 1,000 times more than usual, now my Haruka strength can rotate 5,000 times. Even if I don't have pure chi, I can now kill cultivators of the 6th Xian Qi layer, whispered Lin Feng. His eyes were still closed and the wind was blowing on his body, gently. He looked perfectly relaxed. The wind brushing away on his body felt extremely comfortable and pleasant. Wind, said Lin Feng, and then he moved like the wind, he looked like an illusion. Xiaoya was astonished, Lin Feng, in a flash, had landed a few hundred meters away. How fast, thought Xiaoya, she was astonished. Traveling over a few hundred meters in a flash was extraordinary. Lin Feng stopped and smiled. His pure chi was still restrained, he couldn't rely solely on his strength of the Harukas because without pure chi he couldn't fly through the air. If he lacked speed but had the necessary strength to kill extremely strong cultivators, it was useless. He needed to move fast. Bro, said Xiaoya. Lin Feng turned around and smiled at Xiaoya in a soft way. Xiaoya, are you not bored? You've been looking at me for a few days. No, I like to look at you when you practice cultivation, explained Xiaoya while shaking her head. Bro, should we get ready to leave the mountain? Lin Feng looked at Xiaoya and nodded. He had been there for a few days already, he obviously had to leave at some point. He had to participate at the great competition of Shuiyu. Oh, I will go and pack up our things then, said Xiaoya while standing up. She then ran over to the hut. Lin Feng sighed. Xiaoya didn't look happy to leave, she was still hoping that her grandfather would come back. Actually, Lin Feng was convinced that if her grandfather had given him those 3 things, it meant that the old man knew that Lin Feng was going to leave. The old man knew that Lin Feng couldn't stay in the mountains forever. If the old man wanted to find them, he wouldn't look for them there. But at least, Lin Feng and Xiaoya could leave a small note for the old man. Then if he really came back, he would be able to find them. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered, he followed Xiaoya to the hut. Xiaoya had had the same idea as Lin Feng, she was leaving a small note for him by carving a few words into the table. Bro, what should I tell Grandpa so that he can find us easily? Asked Xiaoya when she saw that Lin Feng was there. Let me write it, said Lin Feng. He then moved towards the table and started writing words in huge letters. Shuiyu Country, Yangzhou City. Yangzhou City was Lin Feng City. No matter what, everybody knew him there. If the old man found Yangzhou City, he would be able to find Lin Feng and Xiaoya. Looking around for them in the continent of the 9 clouds would be too inconvenient. Yangzhou City, whispered Xiaoya. Then she giggled while looking at Lin Feng. Bro, I'm going to pack up. There weren't so many things in that tiny hut, the most important things were the herbs of the old man. There were many priceless herbs. Lin Feng didn't even know about some of them, but he understood that the potions the old man had given him were priceless. Xiaoya took a long time to pack everything. She then smiled at Lin Feng and said, "Let's go." "Alright," said Lin Feng. After, the two of them slowly left the mountain. They were both walking on a small road. Both of them turned around and looked at the hut one last time with profound expressions in their eyes. Xiaoya looked irresolute and Lin Feng felt nostalgic too. In that hut, Lin Feng had recovered in peace and serenity. It was a synonym of peace for him. Far away from massacres, death and violence. He had only been staying with an old man who didn't like to talk and an innocent young girl who was adorable. Lin Feng had been able to regain his peace of mind there. In the future, he would maybe rarely find such a place again. On a small rock, Lin Feng took out a skin mask and put it on his face. That mask fused with people's faces perfectly. There wasn't a single flaw. It really looked like a human face. The old man was a doctor, but he was also an expert at fabricating masks. "Bro, your face completely changed," said Xiaoya while giggling innocently. Lin Feng had another face. His skin was glossy like wax. He looked like he was sick. "If you can't see that it's a mask, other people won't," said Lin Feng while smiling. His chi also gradually changed into an illusion. It was different from before. Even his closest friends and family members wouldn't be able to recognize him. People from Tianfeng and several others wanted him dead. If he appeared as the real Lin Feng, his life would still be in danger. People from Tianfeng had sent a few dozen extremely strong cultivators to kill him, all of them of the 6th Xian Qi layer and one of the 7th Xian Qi layer. It proved their determination to kill him. Besides, seeing how he had killed them all, if he appeared again, people from Tianfeng would do anything to kill him. After what had happened, they would deploy their full strength. Chapter 576, Determination. The rules to choose the participants were simple. They had to fight and win to prove that they were strong enough to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. Of course, that wasn't enough. After all, the number of allocated places weren't many. There were only 5 places. They had to keep fighting until there were 5 people left. Those 5 winners would then be sure to participate at the great competition. Before, people regularly died during that round of selection in the frame of which they had to defeat cultivators from Dragon Mountain. However, this time, it was different. They just had to defeat people from Shuiyu or Tianfeng and they would be sure to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. Given the opportunity of not needing to challenge cultivators from Dragon Mountain, they were delighted. Of course, many people were looking at cultivators from Shuiyu and Tianfeng. They were probably easier to defeat than people from Dragon Mountain. At that moment, a silhouette arrived on the gigantic fighting stage and waved. Everybody suddenly stopped talking. That person was going to declare something. Everybody looked impatient. Participating at the great competition of Shuiyu was many people's dreams. Even though it was dangerous, it was an incredible opportunity. It surely had many benefits for cultivators. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you are here, you must clearly understand what is going to happen. I won't need to talk a lot. Those coming onto the fighting stage can challenge others, but I must remind you that on the stage, you cannot kill the challenged, but you can get killed by them. Perhaps you think it is unfair, but that is how we are doing things. You will need to be brave and courageous, otherwise, don't come onto the stage, said that person slowly. Everybody was astonished. Even though they knew that it was always this way, they still felt strange hearing the rules. Those battles weren't supposed to be fair because those who had been chosen by Dragon Mountain weren't allowed to die. Even if those challengers had the strength to kill them, they couldn't. But those challenged could humiliate their opponents in front of everybody, they had to be merciless. However, even if the rules are against it, the challenged may end up dying anyways. Those who wanted to participate at the great competition of Shueyu had to prove that they were courageous, that they didn't care about dying. Courageous people were fearless, all they had in their minds and hearts was cultivation and battles. Alright, let's start. You have until high noon to finish the battles, said that person and left the stage. Everybody's eyes were twinkling. Finally, a silhouette rose up in the air and landed on the stage. He was obviously a young man, only young cultivators were allowed to participate at the great competition of Shueyu. They were all less than 30 years old, that was a rule. That person's eyes looked sharp as he immediately looked at one person, he had been planning to fight against that person since the beginning. He wanted to fight against a cultivator from Shueyu, Yunfei Yang. So cultivators of the 4th Xian Qi layer think they can participate at the great competition of Shueyu. Haha. Come out, said that person coldly. The crowd was laughing coldly. There were surprisingly people from Shueyu who had only broken through to the 4th Xian Qi layer. How miserable. That cultivation level was too low. Yunfei Yang looked emotionless as he slowly walked towards the middle of the fighting stage. You're challenging me. Piece of shit. If people like you participated to the great competition of Shueyu, that would be a waste for us, a waste of available spots for other candidates. People from Tianfeng and Shueyu are a waste, said several people immediately. They hated people from Shueyu and Tianfeng. How come cultivators of the 4th Xian Qi layer had managed to be chosen to participate to the competition? Alright, said Yunfei Yang while nodding. He then slowly walked towards the middle stage. Each of his steps seemed to be releasing some special strength in the ground, as if he had been condensing some force. Boom boom. A loud sound spread in the air, everyone's heart started pounding. What was going on? The young man was frowning. It seemed like Yunfei Yang's feet were filled with a gigantic and monumental amount of force. Boom boom boom. Yunfei Yang made another few steps, after which he made a huge step that made everyone's hearts palpitate. Yunfei Yang's feet contained the force of the earth. Yunfei Yang was in fusion with the earth, it was the human earth fusion. A cultivator of the 4th Xian Qi layer and he has already penetrated into the mysterious human earth fusion dimension, the crowd was astonished. They had seemingly underestimated Yunfei Yang's strength. He was in fusion with the earth, so his fighting abilities were higher than most people. It was like Lin Feng with his human earth fusion, each time he used his sword, it was filled with the force of the earth. This human earth fusion was the same, it enabled a cultivator to borrow force from the earth. Such cultivators could defeat people whose cultivation levels were higher than their own. With determination, it was easy enough to kill people of higher cultivation levels. But apart from the human earth fusion, it seemed like Yunfei Yang had another mysterious ability. It seemed like he understood that terrestrial force extremely well. The aggressive young man on the stage started shaking, he was just staring at Yunfei Yang who slowly arrived in front of him. A terrifying and oppressive energy crashed onto that person's body which made his heart pound even more violently. Get lost, shouted a voice as two fists moved towards his chest and crashed into it violently, making him fly away immediately. Blood splashed everywhere. Boom! The crowd followed the silhouette with their eyes. One punch. The cultivator of the 4th Xian Qi layer had defeated the cultivator of the 5th Xian Qi layer in one punch. That punch contained a terribly oppressive force, it was unstoppable. If anyone else dares insult me again, they will have to bear the consequences for it, said Yunfei Yang looking as emotionless as before. He hated people who caused him trouble, he liked peace and tranquility. With that punch, he had made a huge effort to gain lasting repose, he had wanted to scare everyone. Then Yun Fei Yang went back to where he was initially standing and closed his eyes to have his peace of mind. Nobody else wanted to challenge him, he was too scary. 4th Xian Qi Layer. Those who had already been selected to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu were all monstrously strong. Yun Fei Yang had only broken through to the 4th Xian Qi Layer, but he could defeat people of the 5th Xian Qi Layer easily. Despising him was a mistake. The people from Shuiyu were all astonished and looking at Yun Fei Yang, whose eyes were closed. They were speechless. They didn't really know him, as he was extremely mysterious. He had suddenly appeared from nowhere. He didn't look strong and yet had managed to be chosen for the competition. But, unsurprisingly, all those who had been chosen were incredibly strong. Apparently, Yun Fei Yang was from Duanren City. Down the stage, a sick-looking man was surprised and looking at Yun Fei Yang. He was smiling in a strange way. That sick-looking man was Lin Feng. On his side, there was Xiaoye, who was holding his sleeve. It seems like everybody misunderstood him, thought Lin Feng. Yun Fei Yang wasn't an ordinary cultivator. He looked extremely ordinary, but he wasn't. Lin Feng had never paid attention to him before, but a moment before, during the battle, Lin Feng had focused on his fighting style. Lin Feng realized that Yun Fei Yang hadn't used force, and hadn't used his human earth fusion. Actually, he had used determination. Chapter 577, A Fist. Yun Fei Yang had been able to defeat a cultivator of the 5th Xian Qi Layer in one punch. He had even made him fly away. That person who challenged him didn't look so proud and arrogant anymore. People were realizing that the cultivators on the stage weren't so easy to defeat. Several people's eyes were still twinkling while looking at the geniuses on the stage. It was impossible that everybody was as strong as Yun Fei Yang. Not all of them could use the human earth fusion. On the stage, amongst the cultivators of Dragon Mountain, there were only 2 cultivators of the 5th Xian Qi Layer. All the others had broken through to the 6th Xian Qi Layer and were truly frightening. Besides, there were also the cultivators from Tianfeng on their right, the envoys. Rumors said that they had recently received the title of envoy in Tianfeng. The weakest were of the 5th Xian Qi Layer, and 3 of them were missing on the stage. As far as the cultivators from Shuiyu were concerned, they were found on the left. Duan Wudao had immediately gone to meet Cheng. Duan Wuya wasn't going to participate, and Lin Feng had disappeared. So 2 people were missing from their group only consisted of 7. Amongst that group of 7, there were 2 of the 4th Xian Qi Layer. One of them was a high official from Shuiyu, Yu Jian, the other was Yun Fei Yang, who had already fought. The others had broken through to the 5th or 6th Xian Qi Layer. Therefore, many people were looking at Yu Jian, which made him frown. So many people of the 5th Xian Qi Layer wanted to fight against him, he was surely upset. Of the many people walking towards the stage, none of them looked arrogant and proud like the first one. These challengers looked cold and glum. Someone arrived on the stage first, stopping all the others in their tracks. They all looked up at the one who had just stepped onto the stage. That young man looked sick and pale. He looked dispirited and not courageous at all. However, his smile was beautiful, like a sunshine. He looked simple and optimistic. One could see that from his eyes. Ha! Many people frowned as they were surprised. What was wrong with that person? They used their celestial eyes to look at him and discovered that his qi was extremely weak. He hadn't even broken through to the Xian Qi Layer. Why was he going onto the stage? He wanted to fight against a cultivator of the 4th Xian Qi Layer. Indeed, it wasn't an illusion, that young man had really walked onto the stage. The ones down the stage were dumbfounded, and those on the stage were astonished when they saw that young man walk onto the stage. That young man looked extremely strange. He looked extremely weak and sick, but he still had that magnificent smile on his face. The strangest thing about the young man was he wasn't alone, there was a young girl with him who was wearing her hair in a ponytail. They glanced to left and right looking extremely naive and innocently curious. In short, he was so weird that he drew everybody's attention. "Are you lost?" asked Yu Jian indifferently. He also felt relieved because everybody was staring at that strange person and not at him anymore. Of course, Lin Feng was in the right place, he wasn't lost. Initially, he was supposed to be on that side of the stage with the group from Shuiyu, but things had changed. He smiled and shook his head. He looked at Yu Jian in a warm and friendly way. "My little sister wanted to go and watch the great competition of Shuiyu with me, but today it's even better, I have the opportunity to come onto the stage. I am so happy to be able to fight against someone who is going to participate at the great competition of Shuiyu," said Lin Feng indifferently. Everybody was astonished. What a naive guy. His little sister wanted him to bring her and watch the great competition of Shuiyu, so he had decided to go onto that stage. Didn't he know what it meant? "Okay," said Yu Jian while frowning, his eyebrows looked like swords and his eyes looked extremely sharp. Even though he was smiling, he still looked like he could stab people with his eyes. "So which one of us do you want to fight?" asked Yu Jian mockingly. He wanted to regain the prestige he had lost a moment ago when people were making fun of him. That strange and weird guy was precisely a good way to do that. "You, of course. Haven't you noticed that everybody wants you to fight?" said Lin Feng with the same resplendent smile on his face. Yu Jian was speechless, his eyes looked sharper and sharper. At that moment, Yu Jian considered that strange guy as an infinite moron, but that moron surprisingly wanted to fight against him. The Celestial Eye's skill was very common in Dragon Mountain, even though Yu Jian had never seen it in Shuiyu, he had of course, learnt it in Dragon Mountain. When he saw that the stranger's cultivation was so low that he was extremely far from the Xian Qi layer, he took pity on him. However, that strange guy did want to fight against him. "Do you know that you may die? I can kill you here," expressed Yu Jian, whose voice was even sharper. He was staring at Lin Feng and continued, "If you die, what will happen to your adorable little sister? Who will take care of her? I really dislike people who dare humiliate my little sister. I will slap you 10 times today," said Lin Feng indifferently. He already knew the outcome of the battle. He was going to slap Yu Jian 10 times. "You little piece of trash, I don't feel like talking shit with you anymore," said Yu Jian. He had finally lost his temper. He made a step forward and then started running, his entire body was like a sword. He wanted to impale Lin Feng. Some sword energy moved towards Lin Feng as well, and it was whistling in the air. Lin Feng's clothes were ordinary clothes and in a flash got ragged. There were holes everywhere. Lin Feng was still smiling in a resplendent way, he looked so miserable, pitiful, yet remained confident. Sir. Sir. The terrifying sword chi was becoming sharper and sharper. Yu Jian wasn't running fast, but in a flash he had already arrived in front of Lin Feng. His sword energy was putting more and more pressure on Lin Feng's body. "After you die, if your sister agrees, I can take care of her for a few years," said Yu Jian coldly. Yu Jian raised his finger, it was as sharp as a sword and could surely stab Lin Feng to death. As expected, Yu Jian wants to kill him. Thought the crowd while looking at Yu Jian's finger, how cruel. That was normal though, anyone would have killed him. That strange guy wanted to die. When they saw Lin Feng raise his fist, they found him even more pitiful. His fist contained no energy, it wasn't diffusing any magnificent light, he looked too desperate. It was a simple and weak fist. Did Lin Feng want to use his fist to block Yu Jian's finger? He would surely die. How could a fist collide with a sword? They could already imagine Lin Feng's hand getting lacerated. Finally, they saw the finger and the fist collide. The finger didn't impale the fist though, no blood appeared either. They only heard a subtle sound, the sound of cracking bones. Yu Jian's phalanx had broken. Ah! Yu Jian emitted a long and painful shout of agony, making everyone's ears tremble. Yu Jian kept giving blood-curdling shrieks. His finger, which was like a sword, hadn't impaled Lin Feng's fist. Instead, it had broken when it collided with Lin Feng's fist. The fist had won, surprisingly. Was that really a simple fist? Slap. A new sound spread in the air which astonished everybody. Chapter 578, Humiliating Slaps. That clear and bright sound was the sound of Lin Feng's hand on Yu Jian's face. He was slapping him. He wasn't slapping him violently, which was even more humiliating. And it wasn't over. Lin Feng had said he would slap him 10 times. Slap, slap, slap. Lin Feng was slapping him extremely fast. Nobody could see his hand because he was moving at the speed of light. Lin Feng was slapping Yu Jian's face, but for him, it felt as if his heart and pride were being slapped. Lin Feng stopped slapping him after the 10th time. Yu Jian looked like he couldn't believe it with his own eyes. Lin Feng was still smiling at him in a resplendent way, but in a way, that smile looked somewhat evil. Until that moment, nobody understood why Lin Feng's qi was so weak and why Yu Jian, who had broken through to the 4th Xian qi layer, was being slapped by him. They obviously didn't know that Lin Feng had the strength of the Harukas and that it could rotate 5,000 times in his body. Lin Feng's physical strength was the same as a cultivator of the 5th Xian qi layer. It meant that his punches were as strong as the attacks of cultivators of the 5th Xian qi layer. In front of Lin Feng, Yu Jian couldn't do anything, and especially not with a finger. Trying to resist Lin Feng was useless. At the beginning, I wanted to slap you 10 times, but after what you said, I will slap you 10 more times, said Lin Feng indifferently. Yu Jian was speechless and blankly stared at him, to the point that he had forgotten to resist. Lin Feng was saying that he was going to slap him 10 more times as if it were a normal thing. Lin Feng wanted to slap him and he could do as he wished. Sir. Sir, a terrifying sword energy appeared. Yu Jian suddenly turned into a sharp sword. Moron. Boom. Suddenly, Lin Feng's fist landed on Yu Jian's chest. It felt like a bomb had exploded in his chest. His sword energy immediately disappeared as well. People like you shouldn't be standing on that stage, you're a disgrace, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, he slapped Yu Jian 10 times again. He wasn't using much strength, but it sufficed to destroy Yu Jian's pride. Lin Feng was destroying his vitality, crushing his determination and his willpower on the path of cultivation. Everything Lin Feng said, every slap, all those things were profoundly wounding his heart. Words couldn't describe the way Yu Jian felt. Even though Lin Feng wasn't killing him or injuring him, he was crushing his vitality. Yu Jian was only the first one. Yu Qin, Wu Qin and the 2 people in black clothes. Lin Feng remembered them deep in his heart. He had to get his revenge. Those people wanted Lin Feng to die. He wouldn't disappoint them, he would turn into a death god and annihilate them. Disgrace. Get lost. Lin Feng punched Yu Jian and made him fly away. He heavily landed onto the ground. Yu Jian, cultivator of the 4th Xian qi layer, hadn't withstood a single attack. How miserable. From the beginning to the end, Lin Feng had had a monstrous advantage over him. Everybody's eyes were wide open as if they were trying to see how strong Lin Feng was. However, they were disappointed because Lin Feng hadn't used any magical power or skill, he had just punched Yu Jian. It hadn't looked beautiful or magnificent, it had looked plain, he had simply slapped him. It was because Lin Feng hadn't used any skill, that made him even more outstanding and strong. Strength, it's a kind of physical strength, thought some people. Lin Feng's qi was extremely weak, it seemed that he hadn't even broken through to the Xian qi layer. But he had defeated his opponent in one strike. Everybody had thought that it would be the opposite and that Yu Jian would kill him. But Lin Feng had astonished them and taught them a good lesson. Apart from qi, cultivators could use other things, such as physical strength, which everybody had. The problem was that some people hadn't seen cultivators use physical strength for a very long time, some of them had even never seen anyone use physical strength. Lin Feng was a special cultivator. Physical skills had slowly disappeared from the world of cultivation. Modern cultivators preferred learning magical skills, or practice sword and blade cultivation. They liked to learn how to master the elements, wind, fire, thunders. They liked technical skills. Very few people knew what physical skills were. However, today, they had seen a strong cultivator who didn't use magical skills but physical skills. In a flash, he had been able to crush an extremely strong cultivator with a plain and simple punch. He had broken Yu Jian's finger. He hadn't used pure qi or anything. Then, he had slapped Yu Jian, who had been absolutely unable to resist. That is a very rare skill, thought a young man on the stage at that moment. Lin Feng looked sick and his skin looked glossy, but his smile was magnificent. People could see that his smile was filled with confidence. He was extremely confident. Even though he looked sick, he didn't doubt himself. Everybody had despised him because of his smile and weak-looking appearance, but he hadn't paid attention to them. In his heart, he knew that he was extremely strong. He didn't care about people's expressions of surprise. Actually, it proved everything. Interesting, thought Yun Fei Yang while looking at Lin Feng. Yun Fei Yang had surprised everybody, but Lin Feng had as well. People initially thought that the second battle would be uninteresting because the first one was so good, but in the end, people were astonished watching the second. They had discovered another sort of cultivator, a physical cultivator. Lin Feng stopped looking at Yu Jian. Yu Jian and Yu Qin weren't his main targets. He would crush them sooner or later. They were losers in Lin Feng's eyes. Maybe they were extremely happy about the fact that Lin Feng had disappeared. They thought that he was dead already, having been killed on that night. They didn't know that they would die sooner or later. They were beyond redemption. Lin Feng looked at all the people on the stage. He of course knew them all. The 7 envoys were all familiar to him. Even the people from Dragon Mountain were there and could be challenged. Lin Feng could even recognize a few people amongst them. There was Tang Yu, who belonged to the oldest and wealthiest family of Celestial Dragon. She looked just as cold as before. She looked like a crane amongst chicken. People didn't dare look at her in the eyes. On her right, there was another beautiful woman. She was stunning. It was Qin Meng Xian. She had a resplendent smile on her face. Her cleavage was as deep as usual. How many men were falling in love with her? How many would dare attack them? Lin Feng had also astonished a man who was standing between those two beauties. Between them he almost seemed invisible. When Lin Feng saw him, he realized that he was wrong to think that the man regarded so little attention between those two women. He indeed looked ordinary, but in fact his qi was incredible. With him between those two beauties, aesthetic criteria were respected. The scene looked harmonious. Besides, Lin Feng had already seen that person. In the palace of the Cosmic Market, he had seen Li Hen. That young man between Tang Yu and Qin Meng Xian was the one who was with Li Hen in the Cosmic Market. Lin Feng didn't believe that Li Hen was his sister. The old man with whom Lin Feng had exchanged the sanguine soul grass had told him that some people could break some rules there. That young man was one of them. At that moment, Lin Feng obviously thought of a name. Dragon Mountain's Imperial City, Jun Mo Shi. Chapter 579, 7 Winners. In Shuiyu, Duan Wudao was extremely aggressive and violent. If anyone offended him, he killed them. But, he was good to those good to him. He was absolutely fearless. However, Jun Mo Shi was different. He wasn't violent or aggressive. He was smiling. He looked ordinary, but his qi was proof that he was strong. Who was stronger between Duan Wudao and Jun Mo Shi though? Lin Feng understood that with his current strength, he couldn't defeat those two people. He couldn't even defeat Tang Yu and Qin Meng Xian. Lin Feng walked on the side of the stage. The crowd calmed down. When they calmed down, they realized they now had another problem. Yun Fei Yang and Yu Jian were two cultivators with the lowest cultivation level on stage. Yun Fei Yang had proved how strong he was during the first battle. Yu Jian had appeared as a weak one, but no one was able to challenge Yu Jian because Lin Feng had been too quick. Now they couldn't challenge him again because he was injured. The only people left were cultivators of the 5th Xian Qi layer, and fighting against them might prove too difficult. There were 5 open spots for potential candidates, but they wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Putting one's life at stake in such conditions was too scary. "I'll give it a try," said someone at that moment. He looked cold and detached. With his finger, he pointed at a cultivator from Shuiyu, at one of the 2 cultivators in black clothes. Those 2 had broken through to the 5th Xian Qi layer. They had appeared from nowhere in Shuiyu, and Lin Feng didn't know who they were or what their social status was. The one who was pointing at them looked evil and cold. He slowly walked onto the stage and released a monstrously violent energy. His facial expression looked colder and colder. What a cold energy, thought the crowd. That person gave them a very cold impression. He looked brutal and violent, as if he was going to implode or explode. But those on the stage weren't weak either, they all had a terrifying battle energy. "I know you and I are the same, we are blade cultivators." "Take yours out," said the challenger coldly. He then slowly unsheathed the blade he was carrying on his back. It was a simple yet sharp blade. Some azure dragon lights were twinkling on that blade. "It's a good blade," said the one in black coldly with his hands on his waists. He then added, "When I unsheath my blade, blood always flows. So, just before killing you, I will unsheath my blade." "You're too self-confident," said the cold-looking young man with the azure blade. His blade energy became even more intense and strong winds appeared around it. He was surrounded by blade energy flowing around him. The one in black suddenly was surrounded by strong winds as well. His black clothes were fluttering in the wind. He was releasing deadly energy. "Let's fight," said the cold-looking young man. In a flash, he threw himself at his opponent without hesitation. Roar! A dragon roar spread in the atmosphere. It seemed like the azure dragon carven onto that blade was alive and transforming into a shadow. The one in black looked furious, he wanted to destroy the challenger. "Lacerate," shouted the one in black clothes. His hands turned into twinkling blades and moved towards the azure dragon blade shadow and destroyed it. However, the cold-looking young man jumped towards the one in black clothes. His blade was high up in the air and he was moving it fiercely. This time, 5 azure dragons appeared and roared. They opened their mouths showing their teeth and threw themselves at the one in black. They wanted to devour him. The one in black trampled onto the ground and moved back at full speed while releasing some monstrous pure chi filled with blade energy. Boom boom boom. A terrifying pure chi blade emerged out of his body and moved towards the azure dragons at full speed. The 2 fighters were moving at full speed. Die! A cold voice emerged in the air. The one in black surprisingly stopped moving backwards. Instead, he started running forwards into the challenger again. He was getting closer to him. The challenger's blade was violent and brutal while the skills of the one in black was agile and light. Maybe the one in black wanted to unsheath his blade, which was why he was getting near the challenger. The azure dragon blade skill, as expected, didn't block the skill of the one in black. The one in black was extremely close to the challenger. Finally, a gloomy cold light appeared. Being fast and skillful, many people only saw a light and didn't see any blade. That blade was exceptionally fatal. The challenger's face drastically changed. He released some pure chi and some terrifying blade energy. His azure dragon blade moved back and then moved towards the one in black. Suddenly, a metallic sound emerged in the air, and some sparks appeared in the atmosphere. The 2 blades had collided. The challenger didn't look panic-struck anymore, he smiled evilly. "Lacerate," he shouted furiously. In a flash, his azure blue blade broke into several smaller blades which moved towards the one in black clothes. They were extremely close to each other, and the small blades were moving to the neck of the one in the black clothes. If those blades reached his throat, he would certainly die. The one in black clothes had to make a decision in a flash. He was pulling a long face. He immediately lied down on the stage and the blades passed above his head, but at the same time he could sense that another blade was moving towards him. His blade was pushed away and suddenly the edge of a blade was pressing against his throat. He looked at the challenger who was smiling at him darkly. "You lost," said the challenger to the man in black, his voice was ice cold. The one in black said in an evil way, "Surprisingly, you did it that way, that's only a part of the battle. You were extremely confident and arrogant today. If it had been a battle to death, you would be dead already." "Who would care about the way I did it?" said the challenger coldly with the same evil smile. The one in black was puzzled. "I lost," said the one in black feeling ashamed. 3 people from Shuiyu had fought, 2 had lost, including him. The challenger moved his blade away and immediately walked towards Lin Feng. He was the second winner. If he managed to remain until the end, he would be able to participate at the great competition of Shuiyu. 2 people, thought the crowd. Lin Feng and the cold-looking challenger had won. In a flash, the crowd was getting excited. There were many cultivators of the 5th Xian-Qi layer. If Lin Feng had won his battle, why wouldn't they? There were still a few cultivators of the 5th Xian-Qi layer amongst the people from Shuiyu, and Tian Feng had a few cultivators of the 5th Xian-Qi layer. They were all potential targets for challengers. Those who had already fought couldn't be challenged again, they had to recover. Therefore, people were trying to find other targets. In many people's opinions, the cultivators on stage were actually prey for those in the crowd. Alternatively, the challengers were prey for those cultivators on the stage. At high noon, 8 people had died during battles and 6 had been injured, all of them were challengers. Of course, a few had won too. After Lin Feng, the cold-looking young man, another 5 challengers had won. Perhaps they were going to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. They had proved that they deserved to be with those strong cultivators on the stage. After the 7-1, nobody else challenged the strong cultivators on the stage. Too many had been killed or severely injured, so no one dared challenge anymore. Amongst those 7 people, 5 had to be chosen. Those 5 people would also represent Dragon Mountain at the great competition of Shuiyu. Chapter 580, Lin Feng. Amongst those 7 people, 2 of them had to be excluded. This time, the manager of the event went towards these 7 and asked, "What do you think, who should be excluded?" When the 7 people heard that question, they were speechless, but they glanced at each other and 2 people were being stared at in the end. Lin Feng and the cold-looking young man. In their opinion, Lin Feng's physical strength was brutal, but the one he had fought against was also the weakest one. Yu Jian had only broken through to the 4th Xian-Qi layer. That was just a free win for Lin Feng. If he had fought against someone else, he surely wouldn't have won that easily. Besides, they were convinced that they could easily dodge Lin Feng's punches and defeat him. His pure qi was extremely weak, he hadn't even broken through to the Xian-Qi layer. They had a million ways to defeat him. As far as the cold-looking young man, even though he had defeated a cultivator of the 5th Xian-Qi layer, his attack had been too sly. He had broken his own blade into several pieces and then attacked the one in black clothes by surprise. The others had defeated cultivators of the 5th Xian-Qi layer directly, so they thought highly of themselves. Therefore, they thought that Lin Feng and the other young man were the ones that should be excluded. The manager looked at those 2 young men and smiled. "Well, I will not waste your time then. Since you think those 2 people should be eliminated, fight against them, and if you win, they will be eliminated. If you lose, you will be eliminated. It's as simple as that." Everybody was silent when they heard him. That rule was indeed extremely simple. One had to fight against Lin Feng and another one had to fight against the cold-looking young man. The losers would be eliminated. Based on that simple rule, the 5 extra candidates of the great competition of Shuiyu would be selected. Of course, there was one problem. The three who were not going to fight didn't need to do anything and they would immediately be selected. They didn't need to fight against anyone and take the risk of being eliminated. Thus, nobody really wanted to fight even if they thought that Lin Feng and the young man were the weakest ones. When the manager saw that they were all remaining silent, he smiled again and said, "Since you don't want to fight, I will let them choose one of you to fight, the other rules don't change." How cruel! Thought the crowd. Lin Feng and the cold-looking young man would probably choose the weakest of the five. If those chosen by Lin Feng and the other lost, they would lose face more than if they took the initiative to fight. After all, everyone had seen them fight a moment before, they knew perfectly well who the weakest and the strongest ones were. "I will fight first then." "I choose him," said one of those five people at that moment while pointing at the cold-looking young man. He didn't choose Lin Feng, even though his chi was extremely weak, he had no idea how strong Lin Feng really was. Maybe Lin Feng had been hiding something, it wasn't clear, therefore choosing the cold-looking young man was the safest choice. In fact, he was right to do so because in the end, he won. He knew the cold-looking young man's trick so he had known what to expect. He did require a few minutes to win though. So he was going to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. One person is left. The crowd looked at Lin Feng, he was the protagonist of that minute. Someone had to fight against him and the list of the 5 extra fighters who would participate at the great competition of Shuiyu would be fixed. Those 5 people would also go to meet Cheng. Would Lin Feng be one of them? A lot of people didn't have a favorable opinion about Lin Feng, he had powerful physical strength but there were too many ways of defeating him. "I will fight against him." As expected, one of the 4 others pointed at Lin Feng and challenged him. He was convinced that he would defeat Lin Feng and participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. He was thinking differently from the first one, that person thought that Lin Feng was the easiest to defeat. Lin Feng looked at that person point at him. It was a young man in cyan clothes. Lin Feng had seen that person fight a moment before, his strength was his speed. "He is too fast, that's a pity for that sick-looking guy," thought the crowd when they saw how quick that person was. To them, Lin Feng had no hope. Even though he was strong, the other one was too quick. Lin Feng would never be able to get close to him. Lin Feng was certainly going to lose. "Alright, you fight," said the others impatiently. They were impatient to see who would grab the open spot to participate at the great competition of Shuiyu. The young man in cyan clothes would likely win though. That young man was looking at Lin Feng with a smile revealing his confidence. He said, "You saw me fight, there is no hope for you. You have a mysterious physical strength but you will never defeat me. I don't want to hurt you so you should just withdraw, alright? I will participate to the great competition of Shuiyu, there is no doubt about that. Even if you did, there would be no hope for you." When Lin Feng heard him, he had the feeling that guy was a joke. Lin Feng didn't care though, he was still smiling in the same way, nobody could recognize him at that moment. He looked sick and was always smiling like a little sunshine. He didn't look handsome and outstanding like before, otherwise he would have coldly stared at that person. With his new face he had to smile. "You're the weakest one amongst them, yet, you're saying that I would have no hope at the competition." "Do you think you would?" said Lin Feng with a smile yet not a smile on his face which left the other one speechless. He immediately glared coldly at Lin Feng and said, "I was giving you a chance to survive before but now you missed it. Do you think that you can win anything relying on your physical strength? Let me ask you something, are you sure that you can even reach me?" After saying that, the person turned into an illusion and appeared on Lin Feng's left, then right, then behind. He was moving at the speed of light. He appeared in front of Lin Feng and then appeared at his initial position again. His speed was incredible. "How fast," thought the crowd gasping with amazement. He had been really right to choose Lin Feng. He then coldly looked at Lin Feng and said, "Did you see that? You didn't even have the opportunity to react. If I attacked you, how could you block me? If you can't reach me, how can you fight? Lin Feng's eyes twinkled in an extremely strange way. Then he moved, taking a step forwards. The one in cyan clothes was coldly looking at him. Lin Feng really wanted to die. But at that moment, he was frozen. Lin Feng was still standing there, but between them, surprisingly, several Lin Fengs appeared. Shadows. Those were surplus shadows. Slap. A loud slapping sound spread in the air. The one in cyan clothes had just been slapped in a violent way and was immediately thrown down groaning with pain. His mouth was covered in blood. His face felt like it was burning. You think that you're fast? Asked Lin Feng while looking down at him. Lin Feng's words sounded like what a father scolding his son might say. It sounded strange. The one in cyan clothes raised his head and blankly stared at Lin Feng. He was fast. Can I reach you or not? Asked Lin Feng. The one in cyan clothes was still bleeding. He coughed some blood. His face felt even more painful while coughing. He had said that he was extremely fast and that Lin Feng couldn't reach him. That Lin Feng would have no time to react. But at that moment, Lin Feng had been faster than him and had even slapped him. He didn't have the time to reply, he was even knocked down. Everybody thought it looked like a funny spectacle. Everybody was laughing and giggling mockingly. He had chosen Lin Feng as an opponent. Chapter 581, Struggling for the Winged Tiger. 2 people had lost and only 5 were left. This time, the list was finally complete. Lin Feng was probably the most astonishing fighter the crowd had seen. Apart from him, the 4 others were also extremely strong. In Celestial Dragon, they were all famous, only Lin Feng was unknown, because of his mysterious physical strength. He had fought twice and twice he had slapped his opponents. That was incredible. Lin Feng was certainly the most mysterious person. People didn't understand him at all. They were trying to guess who he really was. He was extremely strong and had a mysterious physical strength, yet nobody had ever seen him before. The manager of the event walked towards those 5 people and nodded. You 5 are selected to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. You will also go to Micheng. I hope that you will dazzle there. The 5 people nodded and Lin Feng smiled in a strange way. His status had changed but he was still going to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. The 4 others were excited. They had thought that they wouldn't be able to go to the great competition of Shuiyu, that they would only be able to go to Micheng to watch the battles and not as participants. But now they were also going to participate. In a short time, they would be like all the other geniuses. They would be standing on the stage of the great competition of Shuiyu and fight in front of everyone. May I know your names? Asked the manager to the 5 people. The 4 others introduced themselves and finally the manager looked at Lin Feng. His facial expression was different though. He was wondering who that mysterious person was. Lin Feng looked at him with a radiant smile and replied, My name is Lin Feng. Lin Feng. Lin Feng. The crowd was left speechless when they heard that name, especially those from Shuiyu whose eyes narrowed. That person's name was Lin Feng. They looked at him, he was smiling in the same radiant way as before. They had no doubts though. That sick-looking man with a resplendent smile on his face was probably from the countryside and was lucky enough to have a monstrous physical strength as well as uncanny speed. However, the real Lin Feng was outstanding, handsome, indifferent, frivolous, natural. Those 2 just had the same name. It had to be a coincidence. They were completely different, even their smile was different. Besides, Lin Feng had a monstrous pure qi. Why would he have such a weak pure qi at that moment if he was still alive? That Lin Feng had to be a different one. Lin Feng is dead already. Thought those who had wanted Lin Feng to die. Those who had sent the group of Tian Feng's people to kill him didn't believe that Lin Feng could have survived. Many people from Tianfeng were looking at Lin Feng in a strange way, especially Nia Yun. His eyes were twinkling, but in a flash, he calmed down again. He had already seen Lin Feng before. That person wasn't the Lin Feng he knew. Another Lin Feng, how funny, thought Qing Meng Xian with a smile yet not a smile on her face. Lin Feng was monstrously strong and had suddenly disappeared. It had something to do with Tianfeng, it seemed. Now there was a new Lin Feng who also seemed interesting. "Hello Lin Feng," said the manager while nodding, and then smiled at everybody. "Don't forget to go to meet Cheng." He then turned around and left. The list of participants to the competition was now complete. The selection battles were over. The crowd dispersed, some of them stayed to look at the selected participants with admiration and veneration. Those people were going to fight against cultivators from other countries. Lin Feng also left with Xiaoye. On the road, Xiaoye was just glancing around. As there was nobody, she asked Lin Feng, "Bro, how come you used your real name?" Even though Xiaoye was very young, she wasn't stupid. When Lin Feng had told his real name, she had noticed that everyone looked at him in a different way. Obviously, some people had recognized Lin Feng, maybe some of them were even his enemies. She hadn't thought that Lin Feng would use his real name. "Do you think that anyone recognized me?" asked Lin Feng with an indifferent smile on his face. He gently stroked Xiaoye's hair. With his face and chi, even people who were extremely close to him couldn't recognize him. Lin Feng was walking slowly with Xiaoye. They were walking towards the residence where people from Shuiyu were staying. His winged tiger was still in the residence. Was it okay? Roar. In the distance, roaring sound spread in the atmosphere. It was a ferocious wild beast. Ha! When Lin Feng froze when he heard that beast. He raised his head and looked in the distance. He didn't need to go to the residence anymore. Roar! Another roar spread in the air. It was a ferocious, gigantic wild beast with flames on its body. It was absolutely terrifying. Its chi was very strong. Its wings were flapping extremely fast, and in a flash he arrived in front of Lin Feng. That was Lin Feng's winged tiger, an ancient ferocious animal. "Bro, it looks like an ancient animal," said Xiaoye while grabbing Lin Feng's sleeve. She surprisingly knew what it was. "Indeed, it is an ancient ferocious animal," said Lin Feng nodding. The winged tiger was halfway up in the air and staring at Lin Feng. It stopped there, surprisingly. Lin Feng was speechless. On the winged tiger's back, there was someone. Lin Feng recognized that person, Yun Fei Yang. Yun Fei Yang had seemingly gone back to the residence first and had brought the winged tiger back to Lin Feng. Lin Feng moved his hand and the winged tiger roared and moving forwards. "Yun Fei Yang, don't you think you've gone too far?" shouted someone at that moment. In the distance, many silhouettes were flickering and shouting. Lin Feng was astonished. Wu Qing was chasing after Yun Fei Yang. "I never doubted that you would attack me, but that winged tiger is not yours. I like it just as much as you, but I was never allowed to play with it," said Yun Fei Yang, which made Lin Feng frown. Wu Qing had tried to steal the winged tiger. Yun Fei Yang stopped high up in the air. He was standing on the winged tiger looking majestic. "Play. You want to play with that winged tiger? Say that again. Even though it wasn't mine before, from now on, it is mine and it will only remain mine," declared Wu Qing coldly. He was a member of the Wanshou sect. Of course he wished he had an ancient ferocious animal. Coldness invaded Lin Feng's heart when he heard them. That Wu Qing wanted to steal his winged tiger. Lin Feng hadn't died and Wu Qing wanted to steal his Qiong Qi. Wu Qing was also one of those who had sent Tianfeng people to kill him. Now that Lin Feng had disappeared, he wanted to steal his ancient ferocious animal. "He wants to kill me and on top of that he wants to steal my animal," thought Lin Feng. His heart was filled with coldness but his face was still ornamented with a smile. He was fixedly staring at those silhouettes in the sky. A majority of those people were from Shuiyu. The great competition of Shuiyu hadn't started yet, but they were still gathering. Wu Qing sensed that Lin Feng was looking at him, so he lowered his head and immediately looked somewhere else. Even though Lin Feng had astonished everybody, that was only once, nothing more. Chapter 582, Increased Respect for Him. Hee, you're wrong. The winged tiger belongs to Lin Feng. Everybody knows that in Shuiyu. You never called it yours when Lin Feng was still here. And now that he has disappeared, you think it's yours. Could it be that you're responsible for Lin Feng's disappearance? Could you tell me where he is now? Asked Yun Fei Yang while looking at Wu Qing. Wu Qing was becoming increasingly furious. Yun Fei Yang wanted to cause him trouble. Yun Fei Yang, you've only broken through to the 4th Xian Qi layer, you can easily defeat cultivators of the 5th Xian Qi layer, and you say that you are from the countryside of Shuiyu. I don't want to harm you, so mind your own business. I, Wu Qing, could easily kill a cultivator of the 4th Xian Qi layer, threatened Wu Qing while staring at Yun Fei Yang. I am giving you one last chance, give me the winged tiger. I never said that you couldn't kill me. Alright, the Wan Shou sect likes ferocious wild beasts the most. So if you want it, just take it. When Lin Feng comes back, explain everything to him, said Yun Fei Yang while smiling and jumping off the back of the winged tiger and landing on the ground. You know how to behave in difficult situations. Hee, said Wu Qing while smiling coldly and staring at the winged tiger. Come here. Roar. The winged tiger was flapping his wings in the sky and staring at Wu Qing, but he didn't move of an iota. He didn't want to stay with Wu Qing, apparently. Stupid animal, shouted Wu Qing coldly. He then moved at full speed and a gigantic animal head knocker appeared in his arm. If you don't come here, I will get very angry, stupid animal, shouted Wu Qing. His silhouette flickered and he threw himself at the winged tiger. His eyes looked ice cold. Everybody liked the winged tiger. Wu Qing was a member of the Wan Shou sect and had seen many ancient ferocious animals. However, he never thought he would obtain one. If he trained him properly, the winged tiger would help him during battles and become extremely strong. Who would dare fight against him then? Roar, the winged tiger looked extremely ferocious and cruel. It didn't want to submit. Animal, I won't be mean to you, just be a good boy and come to me, said Wu Qing while smiling coldly. He then made a step forwards and started moving his gigantic animal head knocker. He was about to attack the winged tiger. This time, the winged tiger gave in. It couldn't do anything and Wu Qing would be cruel to him. It really didn't want to submit to a human being though. It suddenly roared in a low voice. It was lowering its huge head looking sad. He was going to submit itself. So you're scared, said Wu Qing smiling coldly. In a flash, he threw an object at the beast and it calmed down. He was going to ride the winged tiger. Come with me, shouted Wu Qing furiously. He made a step forwards and jumped on the winged tiger's back. The winged tiger roared as it left very quickly. While leaving, it looked at Lin Feng in a deep and meaningful way. Wu Qing was riding the winged tiger, all the others from Shuiyu left too. Only Yun Fei Yang stayed there. After everybody left, Yun Fei Yang walked towards Lin Feng, surprising him. He just smiled back. Lin Feng, said Yun Fei Yang smiling. Lin Feng smiled and nodded but didn't say anything. He couldn't call him Yun Fei Yang, he wasn't supposed to know his name. Lin Feng, you're really good at controlling yourself. He stole your beast but you didn't react at all, impressive, said Yun Fei Yang while smiling. Lin Feng was astonished, he lowered his head and smiled in a sharp way. My beast, said Lin Feng while raising his head, he looked surprised. You don't need to hide the truth from me. If I had wanted to say anything, I would have done it a moment ago, said Yun Fei Yang still smiling. During the selection battles, I had doubts. But when they stole the winged tiger, I saw something. People can fool people, but beasts can't. The winged tiger looked at you in a strange way. It was acting differently next to you. When the problems arose, it tried to avoid looking friendly at you. You're smart, said Lin Feng, surprised. Yun Fei Yang was indeed very smart. Then Lin Feng looked normal again with his radiant smile, like the sun. No need to say anything. I understand, said Yun Fei Yang when he saw that Lin Feng wanted to say something. He then added, Lin Feng, let's go, I will bring you to a place. What place? Asked Lin Feng curiously. A place where Wu Qin cannot go, said Yun Fei Yang while smiling. They walked together with Xiaoya as well. They were walking very quickly. Lin Feng was too curious. A place where Wu Qin couldn't go. The three of them were moving neither too slow nor too fast. I'm so curious. How come you recognized me before during the selection battles? Did I do anything? If you say that you just guessed, I won't believe you, inquired Lin Feng. He didn't understand how Yun Fei Yang had guessed that he was Lin Feng. Very easily, even though your qi and your face changed, you have some habits which haven't left you. For example, when you frown, your eyebrows have the shape of an arch. I already had doubts when I saw your facial expressions. Yun Fei Yang continued, then you said your name was Lin Feng in a very calm way. You're good, nobody thought that you were the real Lin Feng. If they did they couldn't believe it. However, I already had doubts and at that moment they grew even more intense. With the winged tiger, I had no doubts, I was sure. He was waiting for you, his behavior could not fool me. When it saw you, it looked at you differently than it looks at others. Lin Feng calmly listened to Yun Fei Yang, he was looking at him with increased respect, he was smart and talented. He was the only one who had discovered Lin Feng's secret. Since you are different now, you must be wearing a skin mask and you probably learned a skill to hide your qi. But your weak qi doesn't look fake, I really don't know how you changed it, said Yun Fei Yang while frowning. Finally there was something he didn't know. You will understand soon, said Lin Feng smiling. They continued moving forwards. Lin Feng had already been to the place where Yun Fei Yang brought him. It was the Celestial Palace restaurant which belonged to the Tang clan, they could drink alcohol there. Lin Feng was surprised, why had Yun Fei Yang brought him there? Today, after the battles, I was invited by Tang Yu to come. She invited us to come here, I mean the geniuses. A piece of trash like myself was surprisingly invited by Tang Yu to come, so I decided to bring you here too, explained Yun Fei Yang. Originally, Tang Yu had invited him and the geniuses. Yun Fei Yang said that Wu Qin shouldn't go there, which meant he hadn't been invited by Tang Yu. She hadn't found him interesting. Lin Feng was curious to see why she had invited people over this time. Yun Fei Yang's cultivation level was lower than that of Wu Qin by 2 cultivation layers, and yet, he had been invited. Chapter 583, Drinking a few bottles of alcohol on the 8th floor of the Celestial Palace restaurant, there were only 10 people. 7 were from Dragon Mountain, Jun Mo Shi, Tang Yu, Qing Meng Xin, Jian Chen, Chui Wu Ming. The 2 remaining were also quite prestigious in the empire, the sanguinary Prince Ling Shui and the warlord Liang Di Long. Ling Shui was the same as his name, Di Long had a spear which had made rivers of blood flow as well. He was a warlord that was extremely brutal and aggressive. The 3 others were from Tianfeng and Shuiyu, 2 were from Tianfeng and only 1 was from Shuiyu. There was Nie Yun and the new second envoy called Yang Fan. The only person from Shuiyu was Yu Tianming. Since Yun Fei Yang had arrived, there were now 2 from Shuiyu. The fact that Yu Tianming had been invited, was in most people's opinion, due to the fact that Duan Wudao wasn't in Dragon Mountain. So, the second strongest person after Duan Wudao was Yu Tianming. However, Yun Fei Yang had been invited and everybody was surprised. After all, he was unknown and had appeared from nowhere, he had very little fame. He was strong enough to be one of the high officials of Shuiyu though. A battle which had made him famous was against the cultivator of the 5th Xian Qi layer. He made that cultivator fly away. That had been an incredible fight. However, Yun Fei Yang was still too weak compared to all those people on the 8th floor who had broken through to the 6th Xian Qi layer or higher. Only Yun Fei Yang was of the 4th Xian Qi layer. What made people speechless was Yun Fei Yang making them wait. And on top of that, he had brought some people with him. Lin Feng and Lin Feng's little sister. Wasn't that a humiliation for the Celestial Palace restaurant? "I'm sorry, I'm late," said Yun Fei Yang while smiling in an apologetic way yet still looking natural and unrestrained. "Everybody knows Lin Feng already, we've already become extremely good friends, so I invited him to come. I hope that Miss Tang doesn't mind." Tang Yu nodded and said nothing. Since Lin Feng was there already, she couldn't ask him to leave. Besides, she was also curious and wanted to know more about him. In the entire empire, very few people practiced physical skills. Those skills existed in antiquity and had then disappeared. Now, those who practiced such skills couldn't break through to high cultivation layers because after having mastered a skill, they couldn't find other physical skills because of their rarity. For those reasons, people like Lin Feng were rare prodigies. But Tang Yu had no choice but to admit that Lin Feng was extremely strong. If everybody only relied on physical strength, none of them could defeat Lin Feng. However, who would stupidly give up pure qi when fighting against him? In that room, everyone had broken through to the 6th Xian Qi layer or more. If they used some of their most particular skills, they would easily destroy physical cultivators of the 5th and 6th Xian Qi layers. However, even with their strongest skills, they couldn't defeat physical cultivators of the 7th or 8th Xian Qi layer. Lin Feng's physical cultivation was the same as a cultivator of the 5th Xian Qi layer, nothing more, so he was easy to defeat. Therefore, even though Lin Feng had astonished everyone during the battle, nobody paid attention to him. Skills and the cultivation level were the most important things for most cultivators. "Please sit down," said Tang Yu, and then the three of them sat down. "Miss Tang, you are such a wonderful and generous person. I, Di Long, can't bear the sight of how some behave here," said Di Long at that moment while glancing at Yun Fei Yang. He then continued while looking at Yun Fei Yang, "Yun Fei Yang, Miss Tang invited you to come here even though you are extremely weak, she gave you face. You should feel honored. But in the end, you arrived late, and on top of that you brought two people who were not invited. Do you think that the two people you brought with you are qualified to be here? Especially on the 8th floor." When Yun Fei Yang heard him, he didn't look furious at all, he just smiled and said, "Are you the host of this place or is it Miss Tang?" Di Long was speechless when he heard him, he then glared at Yun Fei Yang. Yun Fei Yang was really audacious. Did he think that because he had won one battle he could act that way? "I think that you are the only person who thinks that my good friend Lin Feng isn't qualified to be here on the 8th floor. I've been invited by Miss Tang, of course, I feel honored. If she thinks that bringing Lin Feng was inappropriate and lets me know about it, we will immediately leave. I, Yun Fei Yang, am not that poor that I need to come here to beg for a drink, even if it is a glass of great liquor. However, you shouldn't forget that you are a guest too, just like me." "Or am I mistaken?" said Yun Fei Yang indifferently while smiling from the beginning to the end. He looked very friendly. He had been invited, indeed, but if he hadn't he wouldn't have cared. He was desperate to get a drink of the alcohol served here. Lin Feng could already kill cultivators of the 6th Xian Qi layer when he was in Shuiyu, and now he had broken through to the next cultivation level. With his cultivation stable, he was perfectly qualified to be with all those people. Humph. Di Long was furious at Yun Fei Yang. In the world of cultivation, strength was the most important thing to earn respect, but Yun Fei Yang wasn't respecting him. How audacious. "I ask you, why should he be sitting here with us with such a weak qi? He only has a good physical strength and good speed, that's all," said Di Long coldly. He sounded like a judge as he stared at Yun Fei Yang sharply. It seemed like swords were going to come out of his eyes. "Do I have to justify myself to you? What do you want?" asked Yun Fei Yang, who wasn't smiling anymore. He was a patient man, but if Di Long didn't stop, he would lose his temper. What do you want? That sentence was resonating in the room, which became particularly calm. The others were calmly looking at them. Di Long was a bit surprised. Yun Fei Yang was acting so courageously without flinching at all. He was brave. What do I want? Do you want to try and fight against my spear? Or do you want to try together, you two against me alone? Asked Di Long coldly while standing up. He was not one of the best cultivators of Dragon Mountain. Being provoked by Yun Fei Yang caused him even more anger. He was losing face. Together? Yun Fei Yang smiled and glanced at Lin Feng, who was pouring some alcohol into glasses. Lin Feng looked at Tang Yuyu. He still looked sick but still had a magnificent smile on his face. He looked extremely friendly. Miss Tang, I am not used to drinking, could you bring some bottles of hot unit so that I can try them? Asked Lin Feng slowly, which confused Tang Yuyu. Lin Feng knew about hot unit? How? Besides, the alcohol that he was drinking at that moment was better than hot unit. And yet Lin Feng was saying that he wasn't used to drinking alcohol. Tang Yuyu was speechless, she couldn't believe it. Lin Feng, my friend, you're so smart. I also wanted to ask Miss Tang for some hot unit, said Yun Fei Yang boldly without restraint. Lin Feng with his new appearance had also become much nicer. In the past, he would have gotten furious at Di Long and would have attacked already. But at that moment, Lin Feng surprisingly wanted to drink some alcohol. Bro, I also want a bottle, said Xiaoya. Lin Feng pinched her cheeks and said, you drink your glass and that's enough. Oh. Xiaoya stuck her tongue out at Lin Feng. Tang Yuyu looked at those people with interest. She didn't lack alcohol. Bring a few bottles of hot unit, said Tang Yuyu, seemingly talking to the air. In a flash, 2 fire-red bottles appeared. Chapter 584, Alcohol as a Gift. Those fire-red bottles contained hot unit. 2 people, said Tang Yu while pointing at Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang with her beautiful white hand, and those bottles immediately moved towards them. Those bottles moved towards them at full speed, and yet, not a single drop of alcohol splashed. It was very intriguing. The crowd questioned how those bottles got there and how they were able to fly on their own. Tang Yu had just called them. Thank you, Miss Tang, said Yun Fei Yang while watching the bottle spin in front of him. However, it wasn't spinning as fast as before. They were spinning slower and slower until they stopped. Yun Fei Yang then grabbed it and put it in front of him skillfully. Lin Feng didn't do it in such a complex way, he just grabbed the bottle while it was still spinning at full speed in the air. Everybody was surprised at how strong he was. Lin Feng then opened his mouth widely and the alcohol started flowing into his mouth, it kept flowing like a waterfall. Lin Feng's stomach was emitting gurgling sounds because he was drinking too quickly, it was burning in his stomach. Ah, so good. Lin Feng licked his lips, he had downed his glass. Lin Feng's hidden pure qi was rolling in his body. It felt like it was burning, but Lin Feng could clearly sense the pure qi in his body and it was extremely comfortable. That's why Lin Feng hadn't chosen the alcohol from the 8th floor and had preferred to drink hot unit. Hot unit could boil his pure qi, it was a good way to make his pure qi move a little, having been constricted by the potions he had drunk. They would accelerate the recovery process. Miss Tang, can you bring more? 1 bottle isn't enough, said Lin Feng, looking as sick as before, but this time his cheeks were a little bit red. That guy is so strange, everybody blankly stared at Lin Feng. Hot unit was really strong, it burnt pure qi and the stomach. Normal people had to drink it slowly, but Lin Feng downed it in 1 gulp. Those who could do that were rare. Those who hadn't broken through to the Xian Qi layer could burn to death if they tried that. Lin Feng surprisingly could drink several bottles. They couldn't know that Lin Feng had actually ordered the hot unit to stimulate his pure qi. At that moment Di Long was still standing, but he was frozen. how could Lin Feng waste alcohol like that? He was acting like a spoilt brat wasting good things. On top of that, Lin Feng was ignoring him, making Di Long feel even more furious. Tang Yu looked at Lin Feng, smiled and said, "We don't lack alcohol here." Tang Yu then knocked on the table and said, 10 bottles of hot unit. Immediately, the doors opened themselves magically and bottles appeared on her table. Then Tang Yu moved her hand and bottles started flying towards Lin Feng in rapid succession. Lin Feng stretched his hand and grabbed a bottle which immediately disintegrated into pieces. He then sucked in all the alcohol, which was suspended in the air, all of which penetrated into his stomach in a flash. The 9 other bottles were in a perfect light, still suspended in the air. Gotcha, gotcha. People only saw those bottles break one after the other as the alcohol penetrated into this seemingly human organism. Lin Feng downed all the bottles in a flash, he downed each bottle in one gulp. Afterwards, Lin Feng's face looked like it was on fire, he looked like he was going to burn. His throat kept undulating. A scorching hot qi was emerging out of his stomach. It was extremely hot. It seemed like a fire was burning in his blood and all his visceral organs. That hot unit was extremely strong. Even Lin Feng with his extremely powerful corporeal body found it difficult to digest. The others were blankly staring at him, even a cultivator of the 4th Xian Qi layer would have never survived. How was it possible? Lin Feng was insane. He's probably going to die now, thought the crowd when they saw his face gradually change. He looked like he was burning. He overestimated his own abilities, said Di Long mockingly. He had already tried hot unit in the past and he would have never dared drink 10 bottles at once. Lin Feng wanted to die. When Lin Feng heard him, he raised his head, flames were twinkling in his eyes. What a great alcohol, said Lin Feng, flames were emerging out of his mouth, huge flames. That mouthful of flames immediately moved towards Di Long. When he sensed Lin Feng's flames move towards him, he immediately tried to move aside but the flames were too fast. In a flash, they crashed onto his body making him move back. His face was black and some of his clothes were even burnt. Di Long was furious, those flames smelt like alcohol. He blankly stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng hadn't said anything to him and now was spitting fire at him. Yun Fei Yang, against all expectations, was smiling. He wasn't surprised at all that Lin Feng had provoked Di Long, as if he had expected Lin Feng to do it. Di Long had only broken through to the 6th Xian Qi layer and was at the bottom of the ranking list of Dragon Mountain. He had wanted to humiliate Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang as stepping stones. How could Lin Feng react like that? Miss Tang, that alcohol is amazing, do you have anything left? Asked Lin Feng with twinkling eyes and a beautiful smile. He looked a little shy and embarrassed which passed with his red face. He also looked quite drunk, it was funny. Tang Yu was stupefied, that guy was really funny. Even though that alcohol wasn't as good as the one on the 8th floor, it really was a rare and precious liquor. Besides, it was very good for fire cultivators by allowing their blood vessels to widen, so their blood and energies could circulate with less resistance. That alcohol was precious, and yet, Lin Feng had drunk 10 bottles in a flash. That was already a lot, so him being drunk and talking in a funny way was understandable. His face looked like it was burnt, though, he didn't look like he was going to be an annoying drunk, he actually looked funny. You still want to drink? Asked Di Long coldly. Lin Feng had spat fire at him, he was furious, and still Lin Feng wanted to drink. Lin Feng glanced at him but ignored him. He turned to Tang Yu. Tang Yu was smiling in a radiant way and said, that alcohol is extremely expensive, but since you like it, have another round, 10 bottles of hot unit. 10 bottles, whispered Lin Feng. People were astonished, Lin Feng could still drink. I can exchange it against items, asked Lin Feng to Tang Yu. But Tang Yu shook her head and said, no need, the Tang clan doesn't make an infinite quantity of bottles, but 20 bottles is enough. Give him 100 bottles, I will compensate the Tang clan, said someone at that moment. Everybody was astonished. It was Jun Moshi. He wanted to offer a present to Lin Feng. Besides, 100? Tang Yu and Lin Feng were speechless looking at Jun Moshi. Tang Yu nodded and said, all right. No problem. Prepare 100 bottles of hot unit, said Tang Yu while knocking on the table. Lin Feng was stupefied. He was able to obtain 100 bottles, that was great. Thank you, said Lin Feng to Jun Moshi. Lin Feng was happy to get them for free. Chapter 585, The Gift. Jun Moshi nodded at Lin Feng and said, Miss Tang, prepare those 100 bottles but first put 10 bottles on the table please, I also wanted to taste some. Alright, said Tang Yu nodding. She knocked on the table and said, 10 more. Immediately after, 10 bottles appeared. Tang Yu gave the first 5 to Lin Feng and the rest to Jun Moshi. She was surprised. She didn't understand why Jun Moshi was so excited at that moment. I will also try some, thought Jun Moshi smiling. He raised one bottle while looking at Lin Feng and then downed it, just like Lin Feng. Such a good drink makes you feel good, said Lin Feng laughing. He then offered 2 bottles to Yun Fei Yang and downed a bottle too. The fire in his body kept burning and flowing at full speed. Since you all feel that good, I will also have some fun, said Yun Fei Yang smiling. He then took what Lin Feng had given to him. All the men were becoming rude, they were getting drunk together. Only Di Long looked glum. What was wrong with Tang Yu and Jun Moshi? Why were they as rude as those pieces of trash? I hope you won't get dead drunk to the point where you cannot even stand up, said Di Long coldly while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng glanced at him, his eyes were filled with flames. Today, Miss Tang didn't invite you to fight, said Jun Moshi to Di Long in a firm and calm way. Di Long shut his mouth and turned red when he saw how discontent Jun Moshi was. Jun Moshi was the first person in Dragon Mountain, without getting angry, he could scare anyone to death. His calmness and indifference were extremely scary and would oppress anyone. Today, I invited all of you because you are the most outstanding disciples of our 3 countries. I want you to enjoy the alcohol and become stronger with it. Then, at the great competition of Shuiyu, you will all dazzle, said Tang Yu. She added, have some great alcohol. In a flash, the tables moved and 9 bottles appeared, 9 bottles of the alcohol appeared in front of each person. Everybody was astonished, 9 bottles were there. A set of 9 bottles of liquor. Was Tang Yu crazy? Or the Tang clan? People were staring at the alcohol with twinkling eyes, it seemed like the Tang clan wanted everybody to be friends with them. After all, Tang Yu wanted those outstanding cultivators to drink. Even though she didn't have them buy the drinks, if they remembered her and the Tang clan, they would feel grateful and wouldn't forget the role the Tang clan played in their success. Lin Feng smiled slightly. The Tang clan really knew how to do things. In his previous world, he would have never been able to afford such expenses. Almost everybody has tried those liquors, but an entire set of 9 bottles will make your cultivation level drastically increase in favorable circumstances. I knew that those 9 liquors, if used together, could make someone break through to the next cultivation layer. I hope that I, Cui Wu Ming, will be as lucky, said Cui Wu Ming while putting the bottles away. Those 9 bottles had to be drunk in favorable circumstances to make a cultivator break through to the next cultivation layer, so they were, of course, not going to drink them there. In such a place, they would never break through to the next cultivation layer. They all looked impatient. Tang Yu had invited them to offer them a gift. What a wonderful thing. Everybody put their set of bottles away, even Di Long. He stopped causing trouble and stopped looking furious. Those liquors would improve his cultivation, and cultivation was the most important thing for him in life. He just needed to become stronger. Fighting Lin Feng would happen sooner or later anyway. For example, at the great competition of Shuiyu, fighting against him wouldn't be a problem. He would even be able to kill him and make him pay for the humiliations from a moment before. Lin Feng was smiling wryly while looking at those bottles. Those 9 bottles were indeed extremely useful, they could make cultivators break through to the next cultivation layer. Unfortunately, he already used those 9 bottles once, so now the effects wouldn't have much effect on him. Therefore, he wouldn't use them, but for the others they would be extremely useful. Of course, he had obtained all those bottles, and even if he didn't need them, it was a great thing. He would be able to give them to someone else and help them increase their cultivation level. I already used those bottles and those liquors are priceless. I can give them to my new little sister though, thus, everybody who is here will have obtained a set of liquors. Jun Mo Shi moved his hands and in a flash, all the bottles which were in front of him appeared in front of Xiaoya. Everybody was astonished. Nobody had expected that he would do such a thing. He was giving such a wonderful treasure to someone whom he had seen for the first time, he was such an incredible person. Lin Feng was astonished too, why was Jun Mo Shi so nice? He hadn't only given him 100 bottles, but he was now giving Xiaoya those 9 bottles. Thank you big brother, said Xiaoya sweet and innocently while smiling. Immediately after she glanced at Lin Feng and started drinking a bottle. Everybody was astonished. What a naive and cute girl, surprisingly, she started to drink there. Brother? Since you're calling me brother, I will give you another present, said Jun Mo Shi while smiling. His eyes twinkled, his sleeve trembled as a jade appeared. It's a small thing, said Jun Mo Shi, that jade then landed in front of Xiaoya, she was smiling in an innocent and naive way. She was so happy, she loved that world. Xiaoya looked at the jade and she was astonished again, it was a bit cold. A pure saving jade. Some people were astonished. That was a treasure, a real treasure. Jun Mo Shi had offered her a pure saving jade. Everybody wished they had such a treasure. A pure saving jade, as the name indicated, enabled a cultivator to save some pure qi in a stone. And then during a battle, if they had no more pure qi, they could use the pure qi of that jade immediately, it was similar to a pure healing pill. However, pure healing pills, after having been taken, were gone. Whereas pure saving jades could be used over and over again. In order to know how much pure qi could be stocked in the jade, one had to look at its shape and characteristics. He. I'm so happy, thank you, said Xiaoya while smiling. She immediately took the jade of a lace and put it around her neck as a necklace, it looked good on her. Jun Mo Shi smiled and said, good, now it's yours, I hope you will never lose it. Then he looked at the crowd which made them shake, those who had bad thoughts immediately tried to think about something else. Jun Mo Shi, even though he wasn't talking, was saying, using his eyes, that they better not touch the jade. Bro, how do I look? Asked Xiaoya while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled in a warm and gentle way while caressing her head and said, you look beautiful, it's perfect for you, but now I want you to finish drinking the 8 other bottles of alcohol. Lin Feng was talking and pointing at the 8 other bottles. Xiaoya opened her mouth, she stared blankly. She just wanted to try, could she drink 8 bottles? What? Hurry up and drink everything, said Lin Feng. She had to use those liquors properly. Oh. Alright, said Xiaoya while nodding and immediately drank the 8 other bottles. Everybody was speechless, Xiaoya was very lucky. Chapter 586, Unexpectedly Nice. Xiaoya's eyes began to narrow once she finished the 8 other bottles, her face reddened, she looked like she was falling asleep. She looked at Lin Feng and said, bro, I'm so tired. Lin Feng said nothing, just like everybody else. She was sleeping. She had just drank 9 bottles of liquor that were supposed to help her break through to the next cultivation layer and she wanted to sleep. What a waste. Lin Feng knew the effects of that alcohol, she shouldn't be sleepy though. They felt painful and comfortable at the same time, that was the best way to break through to the next cultivation layer. However, Xiaoya wanted to sleep. Lin Feng shook his head and smiled wryly. He looked at Xiaoya who was about to fall asleep and said, "If you're tired just hop on my back and sleep. I will carry you." "Alright," said Xiaoya. She was happy and smiling. Immediately after she jumped onto Lin Feng's back and closed her eyes. The crowd didn't know what to say. Was it what happened when drinking the 9 bottles of alcohol at the same time? "Lin Feng, your little sister is so strange. I remember the first time I drank those 9 bottles I suffered like crazy. I was gnashing my teeth and struggling to practice cultivation, but then I managed to break through to the next cultivation layer," said Jun Mo Shi while shaking his head and smiling. The opposite was happening for Xiaoya. "It's probably because of her body," said Lin Feng, who obviously knew the effects of that alcohol, so he knew what Jun Mo Shi meant, but he couldn't tell anyone he knew the effects. Otherwise everybody would know he had already had 9 bottles at once. Nobody would guess who he was actually except for Tang Yuyu. She would of course know because she had given them to Lin Feng herself last time. When people heard Jun Mo Shi, they felt relieved. It didn't mean that the alcohol had no effect, it was due to that little girl. Jun Mo Shi could even assure them that he had broken through to the next cultivation layer the last time he had drank those bottles, so they were convinced the same would happen for them. Then, at the great competition of Shuiyu, these drinks may make the difference. Sometimes being slightly stronger or weaker could play an essential role in one's life. Being a slightly weaker might lead them to their death. But being a little bit stronger could lead them to success. At that moment, Xiaoya had fallen asleep, but a certain qi kept emerging out of her body. Everybody was astonished. "Does it work like this too?" Everybody was surprised. At that moment, Xiaoya's pure qi was flowing in her body. It was clearly the effect of the alcohol. But while it was flowing, she was sleeping like a log, and even in such circumstances, it seemed to have great effects on her body. Jun Mo Shi, Lin Feng, and Tang Yuyu were also astonished. What was happening? That alcohol had been fabricated by the Tang clan, but Tang Yuyu had never heard that it had effects on someone while they were sleeping. She didn't know that pure qi could flow in sleeping people's bodies. That was extremely strange. Perhaps she's taken something in the past which enables her to benefit from the alcohol even while sleeping. Maybe she took some medicine which slowly dispersed in her body, said Jun Mo Shi. Lin Feng was unsure, had she ever used such a thing? Her grandfather was an incredible doctor and could create potions which he might have used on her. His remedies enabled people to recover very slowly. Lin Feng didn't doubt that Xiaoya had taken something, and that potion had been created by the old man. Maybe his potions had modified her body though. Something was enabling her to benefit from the alcohol even while sleeping, which was usually impossible. If the old man had really given her such a thing, it should actually be great and maybe even more precious than those liquors. Who was the old man concretely? Thought Lin Feng at that moment. He knew all sorts of herbs, could save people, and had even incredible pure healing pills. Then he had suddenly left without explaining why. The old man had always been singing a sad song, but it sounded like a song for a fallen hero. From that song, Lin Feng could guess that Xiaoya's real brother was probably an incredible person as well. Jun Mo Shi is right. She took some potions which helped oppress the effects of the liquor and enabled it to spread slowly in her body, said Tang Yuyu while nodding. She had immediately understood, as it was the only possibility. Lin Feng and the girl weren't ordinary people. They also had treasures in their bodies which enabled them to control effects of external stimulants. When Lin Feng saw Tang Yuyu and Jun Mo Shi smile, he said, "Our grandfather knows all sorts of herbs and grass." "So that's how it is, your grandfather is indubitably an incredible person," said Jun Mo Shi while nodding. If he had given such herbs and potions to the girl, he was definitely extremely skilled. Tang Yuyu nodded, only Yun Fei Yang's eyes were twinkling. An old man who knew all sorts of grass. Yun Fei Yang was surprised. Maybe Lin Feng wasn't lying, but Yun Fei Yang knew that there wasn't that girl on his side before. After he had disappeared, that girl had appeared on his side. Lin Feng had changed and his qi had changed. A young girl, Xiaoya, had appeared on his side. Was Lin Feng possessed? Had he really turned into someone else? Xiaoya's qi was still flowing in a tranquil way. It wasn't flowing too fast nor too slowly, just perfectly. She wasn't going to feel any pain during the process, so there were only advantages for her. Miss Tang, my sister already fell asleep, so I shouldn't stay. I would like to thank you for everything though. It was a great time, said Lin Feng while smiling at Tang Yuyu. She nodded and replied, wait for a moment. 100 bottles, she said in the air. A moment after, someone brought 100 bottles of hot unit and gave them to Lin Feng. Thank you so much, said Lin Feng while smiling and putting them in his ring. Lin Feng nodded at Jun Emoshi once again. He had a good impression. He was the first person of Dragon Mountain and seemed to be generous and tenacious. Lin Feng had seen him twice, and both times, he had been very polite to Lin Feng. The first time was when Lin Feng was exchanging some sanguine soul grass and Lin Feng had a conflict with Li Hen. I'm off too. Thanks for the bottles, said Yun Fei Yang while standing up and nodding at Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu wasn't going to prevent them from leaving. She had invited those people with a simple goal. The Tang clan used to do this every 10 years, right before the competition. No clan could remain prosperous and safe forever. Nobody had such a good karma, especially when they had power and influence. Therefore, obtaining other people's gratitude was a good way to secure one's prosperity for a few years and maybe even a few thousand years. In case of danger, one sentence could save a clan. The Tang clan was used to doing that. They had started doing that a few hundred years ago before something terrible had happened to them in the past. At that time, some people wanted to destroy the Tang clan, but because a few dozen years before they had invited a talented young man who had become a monstrously strong cultivator. The Tang clan had told those people about him, and in a flash, the danger had disappeared. They had always been prosperous. Words were extremely important, and not infuriating those young men was thus extremely important. Nobody knew if, a few dozen years later, they wouldn't become extremely strong. Maybe in a few dozen years, they would leave Dragon Mountain and become the strongest cultivators of the continent of the 9 clouds. Then they would be able to destroy Dragon Mountain easily. On the path of cultivation, there were millions of possibilities. Nobody could predict the future. Lin Feng was carrying Xiaoya on his back. Her face was so hot, she didn't look like she was going to wake up. Her cheeks were very red. Yun Fei Yang left with Lin Feng. They could sense that someone was coldly glaring at them at that moment. It was Di Long. But Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang ignored him. They were walking on a big road and the wind was gently blowing on their faces. It felt very pleasant as they were sobering up. Yun Fei Yang smiled and said, Lin Feng, what do you think of those people? They were unexpectedly nice, said Lin Feng. Haha. Yun Fei Yang laughed and said, you're thinking the same as me, you're surprised too. Those geniuses from Dragon Mountain are surprisingly very nice. The Tang clan is thinking on the long term. Surely anything could happen at the competition. So many people want to participate to the great competition of Xueyu in Dragon Mountain, not only for glory, but also to experience dangerous situations. It is a rare opportunity to become stronger. Chapter 587, Strange Cultivation. It was night, silence reigned supreme. In a pavilion courtyard, there was a silhouette sitting cross-legged around whom a dazzling light was illuminating the atmosphere. It seemed as if a fire was burning. That young man looked outstanding, handsome and smart. While practicing, his face was illuminated by the fire and it made him look particularly handsome. That person was obviously Lin Feng, but at that moment he had taken off his mask. Even though his pure qi was still restrained, it didn't prevent him from practicing cultivation. His cosmos-burning sun skill was still rotating around him. Having drunk 10 bottles of hot unit had particularly helped him retrieve some pure qi. it kept attacking the dust the medicine had left on his energy, making it gradually come back to normal. At that moment, his pure qi was already about to regain its strength of the Xian qi layer. Very quickly, Lin Feng would return to his normal cultivation level. Of course, his corporeal body, in terms of physical strength, was something else. It wasn't like normal cultivation. The flames were becoming denser and denser. On Lin Feng's body, there was a sun pattern, and it seemed like all the flames were condensing on that sun pattern. In the middle of the night, there was even a light beam coming from the sky and crashing onto the sun pattern. Lin Feng could attract sunlight whether it was day or night, it didn't matter. At that moment, Lin Feng was doing just that, attracting sunlight. His cosmos-burning sun skill was very mysterious. It wasn't as easy to understand as its name sounded. When that skill reached its highest level, it could really destroy an entire planet and even more. The sun on Lin Feng's body was becoming more and more real each day. It became more real as his cultivation level increased. Outside of the courtyard, many people were raising their heads and looking at that strange light in the middle of the night. They were very surprised. It seemed like someone was practicing a skill in there. However, even though people could see it, they preferred ignoring it and got back to their own personal business, even if they were extremely curious and were wondering what it was. Sometimes, curiosity could be fatal and deadly. With such a light beam coming from the sky, the one practicing that skill was probably extremely strong. If they bothered him while he was practicing cultivation, they would probably regret it later or maybe even die, so of course, people preferred controlling their curiosity. In Celestial Dragon, they had already seen cultivators borrow the strength of the earth and the sky. Nobody dared to bother such people or despise them, unless they wanted to die. However, at that moment, it seemed like there was actually someone who didn't care about living anymore. Outside of the courtyard, there was a thin and short silhouette looking at the light beam. That silhouette kept flickering and moving towards the courtyard. "What's that?" "It must be here," whispered that silhouette. It actually was Lan Jiao, and she was surprised. After looking pensive for a while, she gnashed her teeth and her silhouette started flickering again. She then arrived at the height of the courtyard and jumped onto the ground. Then she continued running towards the light beam. After a short moment, she stopped outside of a pavilion and saw a person's back. That person was covered in dazzling flames and there was a sun pattern on his body. Besides, the light beam coming down from the sky was falling straight onto his body. That person was, indeed, practicing cultivation and attracting sunlight. What a strong and powerful fire, thought Lan Jiao surprised, when she saw that fire skill. That person could surprisingly attract sunlight. Who was that cultivator? "Who is it?" said a cold and detached voice. Lin Feng sensed that someone was observing him. He immediately stopped practicing cultivation. He stretched his hand and put his mask back on. Immediately, his silhouette flickered in the darkness of the night. He was as fast as the wind. In a flash, he arrived next to Lan Jiao and his fist bombarded the atmosphere. Lan Jiao suddenly felt extremely tense. She wanted to move back but she had no time. That person's speed was incredible. At the moment when the fist was about to reach her face, she closed her eyes and waited to get punched. A strong wind was brushing away on her face and her heart was pounding violently. Was she going to die? But a short moment after, nobody had punched her, so she opened her eyes and immediately looked the person in front of her. Just like Qing Meng Xian had said, that person looked sick but also looked angry because she had disturbed him. Is it him? Thought Lan Jiao. From what Qing Meng Xian had told her, that person's name was Lin Feng as well, and she had hoped that that person would be the real Lin Feng. Qing Meng Xian had told her that it was a completely different, but Lan Jiao had refused to believe such a thing. However, at that moment, she still had doubts. Was he Lin Feng or not? "I spied on you and disturbed you. Why don't you kill me?" asked Lan Jiao, while fixedly staring at Lin Feng, which made him frown. He had almost punched her but had suddenly stopped. "I don't kill people. Let's forget about what just happened. You can leave now," said Feng while moving his fist back down. He was talking in a cold way. If you don't kill me, it means that you know me, otherwise, you would have killed me, said Lan Jiao, while fixedly staring at him, like before. Do you think that I could possibly know you? Where could we have met? Asked Lin Feng coldly and then continued, before I change my mind, you should hurry up and leave. Lin Feng, you don't need to lie to me. You released deadly energy, you wanted to kill me but then, when you saw my face, you immediately stopped. You perfectly know me, you are Lin Feng, said Lan Jiao, while smiling, which made Lin Feng frown even more. He hadn't thought he would come across her. Could it be that you don't trust me? I know that you changed your face and that it has something to do with your disappearance, but do you think I could ever betray you? Said Lan Jiao, whose feelings were hurt. Lin Feng didn't trust her. Lin Feng stopped frowning and turned around while saying, hurry up and leave, otherwise, people will really guess who I am even if you don't tell them anything. When Lan Jiao heard Lin Feng, she smiled and said, I knew that nothing would happen to you. Next time, don't practice cultivation outside, everybody can see the light beam of your cosmos-burning sun. It looks too suspicious. Lan Jiao had actually guessed that he was Lin Feng because of his sun's skill. Besides, at the Celestial Academy, she had already seen Lin Feng surrounded by fire and she had also seen his magnificent sun pattern, therefore, she had almost immediately been convinced that it was Lin Feng. When Lin Feng heard her, he stopped walking, a light beam. Lin Feng knew nothing about it. Each time he was practicing, he couldn't see what was happening outside of his body, he couldn't see the oddities around his body. However, he could feel that, even though his pure qi was restrained, his cosmos-burning sun skill was much stronger than before. Thanks, said Lin Feng, while nodding, and then immediately moved into a room. Tomorrow, he was going to leave for Micheng. He had to stop practicing cultivation and go to sleep. He had to get ready to leave for that place which would be filled with godlike cultivators. In Micheng, he would meet some extremely strong cultivators from the entire region of Shuiyu, from the 13 countries composing that region. That was Lin Feng's first real step outside of Shuiyu. Lan Jiao looked at Lin Feng enter the room and smiled. She knew that Lin Feng was alive, so she was happy. She turned around and her silhouette flickered as she left, disappearing in the darkness of the night. But after Lan Jiao left, under the moon in the courtyard, a silhouette appeared. It looked like a shadow. That person looked at Lan Jiao leave and then hid in the darkness again. Chapter 588, En route for Micheng. Early morning, a gentle breeze swept through the streets. That day was a peaceful day in Celestial Dragon. There were few people on the streets. The reason was that there was a crowd already outside. Many strong cultivators had come with their own beasts. Some beasts were flapping their wings in the sky. Apart from that, there was also a cloud of dust around a myriad of horses. It seemed like there was an infinity of horses and ferocious wild beasts. Actually, that wasn't the first day. They had been there for a few days already. Most people were going to leave and go to Micheng. The great competition of Shuiyu only happened every 10 years, missing it was horrible for most people. They all wanted to watch it or even participate in it. Of course, that group of people was only composed of people who were extremely strong. Weaklings couldn't go to Micheng, it was too dangerous. Fish and dragons couldn't mix together, otherwise the situation would be chaotic. There were all kinds of people, but it was recommended for those who were not able to protect themselves not to go there. Apart from people from Dragon Mountain, there would be people from the other empires in Micheng. Everybody had started leaving for Micheng, which was an extremely fast and mysterious city. Outside of Celestial Dragon, there were many ferocious wild beasts lining up. Those ferocious wild beasts could fly. They were black-winged hawks, but there were also some thunder hawks and some lion vultures. All of them were Xian-level beasts and could travel huge distances. Those who had been selected to participate to the competition would all represent the power of their empire, Dragon Mountain. They almost all looked proud. They were about to leave. They couldn't wait to start fighting at the great competition of Shuiyu. They were finally leaving. The great competition of Shuiyu had always been their dream, and finally, it was happening. They were supposed to be 36 geniuses, but at that moment, there were only 35, one was missing, Duan Wu Dao. "Everybody is here and ready," said someone at that moment. It was Ruolan Shan who had, in the past, brought people from Tianfeng and Dragon Mountain to Shuiyu. Everybody had already seen Ruolan Shan at least once. Ruolan Shan was the one who had chosen most of them. Of course, many people had secretly helped him choose the fighters. This time, they were going to meet Cheng. The great competition of Shuiyu was a way for geniuses to fight against each other, but it was also a way for the different empires to measure their strength. At first glance, one could see how powerful an entire empire was. "Everyone seems to be here except for some Shuiyu people," said someone at that moment. That person sounded discontent. It was someone from Tianfeng. Last time, Feng Chen from Tianfeng had gone to Shuiyu with some envoys and they had never come back, so now they were furious. Tianfeng and Shuiyu were both countries under the jurisdiction of Dragon Mountain, but their relations were independent. On the fighting stage of the great competition of Shuiyu, maybe they wouldn't even hesitate to kill each other if they had the opportunity. They would probably be merciless. When people from Shuiyu heard that person, they coldly glared at those people from Tianfeng. Because there weren't enough people, Dragon Mountain had to organize another round of selection to recruit 5 more people, but at that moment, nobody was missing. It was just that Duan Wu Dao wasn't there because he was going to meet Qing alone. Indeed, Duan Wu Dao is arrogant and unfriendly. "Everybody is here, we are traveling together, and he is an exception. I guess people from Shuiyu are unfriendly and aggressive," said someone else in a cold way. The 2 people in black from Shuiyu coldly glanced at him and said, "We will see if you dare talk that way in front of him. If you don't, it means that people from Tianfeng are all cowards and weaklings." When those people from Tianfeng heard him, they just groaned coldly. They knew how Duan Wu Dao was. It was said that he was unruly, aggressive, brutal and violently. If anyone dared provoke him, he would immediately kill them. He was extremely impulsive. If they had said that in front of Duan Wu Dao, they would have already been dead. "All right. No need to fight. You need to concentrate on the great competition of Shuiyu now. If anything happened to you, then it would be such a pity," said Ruolan Shan. He then continued, "You are extremely strong, which is why you've been selected to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu, so now don't fight against each other. You need to think about what you're going to do after the great competition of Shuiyu." When the crowd heard Ruolan Shan, they remained silent. They all looked impatient. The great competition of Shuiyu was going to be a great opportunity for them. "All right, is everybody ready?" asked Ruolan Shan. Everybody nodded. They had been waiting for that day for such a long time, and it was finally happening. A gigantic crowd was surrounding those geniuses. They were people with different backgrounds. Some of them belonged to the oldest and wealthiest family of the imperial city of Dragon Mountain, the Tang clan, others were from the Cosmic Pavilion, and some belonged to smaller spheres of influence. There were also many people from Tianfeng, imperial tutors and people from the Wanxiang sect. But they were just following the crowd. The real heroes were the 36 young men who were going to participate to the great competition of Shuiyu. Besides, the crowd also knew that people from the entire region of Shuiyu was going to meet Cheng. Everybody would be there, and all those young men would be observed by everybody. "If you're ready, let's go. 2 people can ride those beasts," said Ruolan Shan. Those people then slowly started getting onto the beasts. "Xiaoya, let's go," said Lin Feng. Both of them rode a black hawk together. Yun Fei Yang glanced left and right and finally jumped onto the same beast as Jun Mo Shi. He was alone. With such a social status, Jun Mo Shi was maybe very lonely. Yun Fei Yang smiled and stayed with him. Apart from Jun Mo Shi, people were also looking at 2 other people riding the same beast, a thunder hawk. Those 2 people were Tang Yu and Qing Meng Xian. Lin Feng glanced around and saw Wu Qing, who wasn't riding a black hawk, because he was riding the bestial occultist. Lin Feng was stupefied to see that Di Long was alone on a beast. He didn't need to borrow anyone else's beast. Di Long glared at Lin Feng. He hadn't forgotten the humiliations from the day before. Besides, he had drunk all the 9 bottles of liquor and his cultivation seemed much better than the day before. However, he hadn't broken through to the 7th Xian Qi layer. He had reached the peak of the 6th Xian Qi layer. He would probably break through to the next Xian Qi layer during the great competition of Shuiyu though. He would thus be at the top of the Xian Qi layer. He wouldn't need a long time to break through to the Tian Qi layer. Lin Feng glanced at Di Long and thought, it's best for him to not provoke me. Lin Feng obviously knew that Di Long's cultivation level had progressed and he wasn't the only one. Those who had been invited by Tang Yu to the Celestial Palace restaurant had all become stronger, but oddly enough, the only one who had broken through to the next cultivation layer was Yunfei Yang. Even though the liquors were precious, it seemed like they didn't suffice to make a cultivator break through to the next cultivation layer. A cultivator's heart and state of mind was also very important to become stronger. Ruolan Shan then jumped on his own black winged hawk and he shouted, "Let's go." All the beasts then rose up in the air and started flying towards Mi Cheng. A short moment after, everybody was above the clouds, blotting out the sky and covering up the earth. The sky was filled with ferocious wild beasts. They were releasing a monstrously strong qi. The people on the ground were looking at those beasts in the sky with admiration. They had left. They were going to meet Cheng. Chapter 589, The Humiliation in the Sky. The clouds were rolling because of the wind provoked by the flapping wings of the beasts. From Dragon Mountain to Mi Cheng was a total of 224,000 kilometers. Even on those beasts, they needed 7 days to arrive. Many people were sitting on the ferocious wild beasts, or standing and using pure qi to protect themselves from the wind, while some didn't need to do anything because their corporeal body was strong enough to resist the wind. Lin Feng looked at Xiaoya and then put her behind him, so that the wind wouldn't affect her. But nobody was feeling too bad. After all, they were all extremely strong and powerful. Even though there was a strong wind in the sky, it couldn't hurt them. Besides, they also knew that Lin Feng's body was extremely strong. He had drunk 10 bottles of hot unit without any problem, so that violent wind couldn't do anything to him. Flap flap. The sounds of wings flapping and the wind were mixing. Lin Feng slowly turned his head and looked at a ferocious wild beast which was near him. He could recognize that person. The warlord Di Long was looking at him in an evil way, with an evil smile. Lin Feng looked at Di Long and smiled in a deep and meaningful way. Di Long couldn't guess what Lin Feng meant. Lin Feng, you have an extremely strong corporeal body but your pure qi doesn't even have the strength of the Xian Qi layer. If you didn't have a ferocious wild beast, you wouldn't be able to walk in the sky and would fall down and die, right? Said Di Long with a smile yet not a smile on his face. It sounded like he was threatening him. Lin Feng looked at him with a resplendent smile and said, "Try and see." "Try." Di Long smiled in a cold way. Lin Feng was extremely brave. He was surprisingly telling him to try. "We're in the middle of the crowd and we're all going to meet Ching together. I cannot kill him but I can try and scare him a little," thought Di Long while glancing around. He felt like bursting into laughter. He thought Lin Feng was ridiculous. When Lin Feng saw Di Long smile, he remained vigilant. Flap flap. A gigantic wind brushed away on Lin Feng's body. The beast which Di Long was riding was streaking through the sky and moving towards Lin Feng at full speed. Its claws were twinkling. If that beast got too close to Lin Feng and Xiaoya, they would fall down and die. "Get down!" shouted Lin Feng at the black winged hawk which immediately moved down. Di Long's beast just passed above their heads. It had nearly made them fall down. "Huh! Some people are still fighting," thought the crowd surprised. They were getting excited to see a battle. Traveling in the air was so boring. A battle would entertain them. Even if Ruolan Shan had told them not to fight, it was only between two people, and those watching weren't doing anything wrong. "Let's play together," said Di Long. Then his beast moved back and moved towards Lin Feng again. Even though the beast was flying in an acrobatic way, Di Long wasn't moving at all on its back. "I have no time to play with you," said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. His resplendent smile had disappeared at that moment, his face was filled with coldness. The beast was about to arrive above Lin Feng's hand. If Lin Feng dodged, he would fall down, which was Di Long's goal. Even an animal dares cause troubles. Lin Feng looked ice-cold and shouted, "Asshole." Then, he used the strength of his soul to attack the beast, which then emitted a sharp sound. Lin Feng had swallowed the Wuxian's shaman spirit in the past. If he had taken it out, he would have been able to control the beast, but he instead used it to scare it. Lin Feng's soul was so strong that when facing Xian beasts of lower levels, he had no problem influencing them. "Get lost." Lin Feng bombarded the atmosphere towards that beast, which had no more determination to attack. Boom! Under that monstrous physical strength, the beast emitted a shout of agony and moved away. "Stupid animals dare provoke me," said Lin Feng coldly. Then Lin Feng's black hawk moved backwards and grabbed that beast with its claws and threw it away. Di Long pulled a long face, his feet shook and he jumped off the back of the beast, then he started running in the sky. He looked extremely glum. He had wanted to humiliate Lin Feng and kill his beast, and in the end that's what was happening to him. He had no beast to sit on anymore. "Bastard!" shouted Di Long furiously. He then stepped on his spear and used it to surf in the sky, but he started moving towards Lin Feng again. "Xiaoya, can you stand the wind or not?" asked Lin Feng. "Bro, no problem," replied Xiaoya. Lin Feng nodded and made a step forwards. He walked on the tail of the black hawk and stared at Di Long coming towards him. "Stop!" shouted Lin Feng suddenly. The black hawk suddenly stopped in the air, and Di Long was arriving at full speed. In a flash he was in front of Lin Feng. He only saw Lin Feng make a step forwards, walk in the sky, and his fist bombard the atmosphere. Fist shadows suddenly appeared in the air. Di Long's face changed drastically. He was moving too fast and he hadn't thought Lin Feng could walk in the sky. In a flash, he would collide with Lin Feng. He condensed some pure qi and his spear moved towards Lin Feng. "Get lost!" shouted Lin Feng in an ice-cold way, and his fist collided with the pure qi spear, which immediately broke apart and disappeared. Lin Feng's fist was still moving forward. It was bombarding the atmosphere and it then crashed onto Di Long's fist. A terrifying physical strength rushed forth, making Di Long shake from head to toe. He had the feeling that his arm was broken. In a flash his body flew away like an unstrung kite. Lin Feng's beast was moved back and caught him in the air, so Lin Feng landed back on its back and it then clapped its wings, moving towards Di Long. Boom boom boom. The black hawk immediately hit Di Long with its claws and made him fall down. Then, the black hawk stopped following him, turned around and moved forwards. "Ah!" Di Long shouted furiously while falling down. He initially wanted to show how strong he was, and in the end, he had ended up humiliated by Lin Feng and a beast. He had shown nobody how strong he was. He then tried to stabilize in the air, created a pure qi spear and stepped on it. However, all the silhouettes had become small black dots in the air. He hurried up and finished condensing his pure qi spear, then he tried to catch up with them. If he didn't manage to catch up with them, when would he arrive in Micheng? At that moment, Lin Feng was standing steadily on the black hawk and he looked amused. He then sat down and smiled in a resplendent way as if nothing had happened. The crowd was also looking at Lin Feng. They were amused. Lin Feng had managed to defeat Di Long, who was extremely strong. Amusing. In the distance, Di Long was surfing in the sky. This time, he didn't go and provoke Lin Feng. Instead, he jumped on a ferocious wild beast on which there was someone from Dragon Mountain. He then looked at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way and said, "You will pay for that at the great competition of Shuiyu. You can only blame yourself." said Lin Feng in a despising way. Di Long pulled a long face. He could indeed only blame himself. He had wanted to humiliate Lin Feng but it hadn't worked. Don't worry, at the competition, I will give you an occasion, but I can tell you that your trip to Micheng is a one-way trip, you will stay there forever, said Lin Feng in an ice-cold way while releasing some deadly energy. Everybody was stupefied. Lin Feng wanted to kill Di Long.